Give me big old buckets of butter beer. Give me big old barrels of butter beer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butter beer.
Welcome to the Three Broomsticks. We invite you to pull up a chair, grab a butterbeer, and settle in for a hearty discussion about Harry Potter. I'm Irvin Cakeman.
I'm Sophia Jenkins.
And I'm Aurelia Lieb. And I'm so delighted to welcome today's guest, which is the lovely Margarete. Hello, how are you?
Hi.
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 So Margarete, why don't you tell us what your house is, how you discovered Harry Potter, what your favorite book is, and also if you have a favorite character.
So my house is Gryffindor. I've always been Gryffindor. It's never changed.
Which is the truthfully right answer.
It is the only answer I've ever gotten on anything. I think there was one time on Pottermore, when it was still Pottermore, that I purposefully answered things sort of like a little bit differently. So like my second option, or just, you know, if I was in a weird mood that day, but then I got Slytherin. And then I had a bit of an identity crisis. And then I did it again, and I got Gryffindor, and I've never gotten anything else. So I'll just go with that.
Yes, that sounds good.
How I came to Potter, I was one of those people who decided not to like Harry Potter when I was in primary school. I think I read the first book, and I couldn't get into it. And then I remember, I think in first or second grade, I went to one of those like birthday parties, and the theme was magic, and I went as a fairy, and everyone else went as Harry Potter characters, and I just felt so lost and out of the loop, and everything was terrible. And then I discovered the German audiobooks. Aurelia, I don't know if you've
Yes.
listened to those. Yeah, okay.
I may have had the third one on cassettes, and at some point may or may not have basically known it by heart.
Yeah, same. There was a point where I could tell you like what track was playing, even though the tracks didn't exactly match the chapters.
Yeah.
Like I could tell you when the track was skipping. Yeah, so that's how I got into Potter. I mean, there are lots of different things that also contributed. My cousin used to read the books to me, and I got bored. But then at some point, I don't know, I stopped talking about anything else. So that. My favorite book is actually Half-Blood Prince, which is good for today.
Yes!
I don't really know why. It used to be Deathly Hallows because a lot happens, and I thought it was great and like an adventure story. But I really, really enjoy Half-Blood Prince. I really like all the backstories that happen and all the political things that happen behind the scenes. And you know, it's a really good book. And favorite character? I don't really know if I have a favorite character. I really like Harry, and I know that's a really like unconventional answer for Harry Potter fans, but I have main character syndrome and like a people helping thing, so I guess I
fully understand.
I can understand where Harry comes from a lot of the times, but I also get frustrated by him a lot. I am a big Luna fan, and
all of us non-Gryffindors are just like, wait, you relate to Harry? How?
He's very relatable as a Gryffindor.
I do really like Luna, but I think more in like I would have liked to be you when I was in high school, and I wasn't. But yeah, I think that's about that. That's me.
Well, we're so happy to have you today, Margarete, and we are actually going to talk about a chapter of your favorite book.
Woo!
So that's a bit convenient.
Yeah. I know. I'm so glad that you are a lady of taste and like Half-Blood Prince, because today, for episode number 14, we are gathered to discuss the 138th chapter of the Harry Potter series. It is Will and Won't, the third chapter of Half-Blood Prince. Listeners, of course, we encourage you to read the chapter before listening to our episode, but, you know, up to you. Like, you can say you will read it, you can say you won't read it, and it'll be fine either way.
Well done.
Thank you. But before we get into Half-Blood Prince, we want to offer a toast to the comments on episode 11. That episode was discussing the third chapter of Goblet of Fire, The Invitation, as part of our whole quest to discuss all of the third chapters. So we raise our glass to commenter Snidget Gold 3075, who said, "I'm all here for the chapter title critique, especially using the angle the hosts took, considering JK's decisions based on the context of what was going on in her world at the time. I personally think Philosopher's Stone / Sorcerer's Stone had the best set of chapter titles of all the books, which makes sense. She had the most time to develop that book and needed to actually market it to potential publishers. I would love to use this lens more often in all aspects of Potter analysis. And the winner for lamest chapter title, in my opinion, is Chamber of Secrets, The Very Secret Diary." They also did offer an addendum later that they realize Order of the Phoenix does have the best chapter titles, because it's so true. It does. But yeah, I thought that was a great comment. The comment about Sorcerer's Stone having really good chapter titles, I was like, well, some of them yes, and then some of them no. Like, there are 2 chapters just titled Halloween and Quidditch.
Yeah, well,
so
I guess since we're being introduced to the world, it's like, I don't know, it's different than later on.
Oh, so grading on a curve?
I agree. With like Halloween is pretty lame, but Quidditch, like we've never heard of Quidditch before. Well, we have through the book, but I don't know. I think that's not a bad title for the first book.
Exactly.
If she'd named anything else in any, like, you'd had a chapter in Order of the Phoenix called Quidditch, that would have been lame.
And I also push back against the fact that The Very Secret Diary is a lame chapter title because there's a ring. So the Chamber of Secrets Half-Blood Prince parallels are some of the strongest. So there's a parallel to The Very Secret Diary in this book, which is The Secret Riddle. And I'm like, that is such a cool title. So I feel like that retroactively makes Very Secret Diary a decent chapter title.
Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, while we're on the topic, what do you think of this chapter title for Half-Blood Prince 3, Will and Won't? Because I love it. I think it's so clever.
Yeah, I gotta say that, like, as a young child reading these books, it took me forever, so many rereads, before I realized that the will in this chapter was referring to Sirius's will. And I know that sounds so dumb. But I just didn't get it. And once I did, I was like, oh, this is such a clever title. Oh my.
Now, this is definitely one of those chapter titles that I always remember because it is so good. Because, you know, there's hundreds of chapter titles and not all of them are super memorable, but this is definitely up there.
I love the wordplay, so it's a good title.
Yeah. I mean, it has my 2 favorite things, wordplay and alliteration, so I am here for it. All right. Well, before we get into discussing who will and who won't, let's find out what actually happens in this chapter. So this chapter summary was written by Sam. I have a few notes and a few alterations I'm going to make because Sam is full of nonsense, as we know. So, on with the chapter. Harry has learned to read, at least judging by the amount of articles conveniently left out for us readers to digest. There's so much news, both speculative and idiotic. The Daily Prophet never does hit that sweet spot of journalistic, well, anything. While Harry has learned to read, he hasn't learned to pack, and Dumbledore, in a moment that dashes the fans of ring theory, arrives much like he does in Sorcerer's Stone, but this time has the decency to force his way in, bully the Dursleys, and do some neat tidying of a deadly serious issue. Dead serious.
Wow.
Wow.
That was dark.
That was.
Oh. In what amounts to a both hilarious and cruel chapter, Harry finds himself blessed with more money than God, as he now owns a townhouse in London. So the rich gets richer. Suck it, Ron.
Sam, are you okay when you listen to this? Can you please let me know if you're okay?
Wizard capitalism.
All right, so, getting into this chapter, I love it. I love it so much. I feel like this chapter really shows, like, how far Jo has progressed as a writer in so many ways. Because, like, the chapter does so much. It sort of reintroduces us, catches us up, like, sort of does the recap and, like, you know, gets us out the door. And I'm just like, we have come such a long way since Harry Potter thought he was a very unusual boy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or the, like, whole Alpos chapter where he's like, this was from his best friend Ron. Like, yeah,
we know who Ron is.
we know who Ron is.
Yeah, I had actually forgotten that this is the let's catch people up on what happened chapter. I opened the book and I was like, oh, we don't start with Dumbledore arriving. We start with articles telling us that people now believe, I suppose, Harry and Dumbledore and that Voldemort's back. And this is the let's catch anyone who hasn't read the last 5 books up to speed. Not that it would.
Yeah, I was actually going to push back because I feel like it doesn't really catch up the people who haven't been reading. I feel like it more catches up the people who have been.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think especially the people who, unlike us nerds, haven't, you know, repeatedly read books 1 to 5 in the 2 years it took till Half-Blood Prince got out. More like the people who've read it once and were like, oh yeah, 2 years on, I'm not fully remembering everything in Order of the Phoenix. So this is the catch-up for them.
And it also catches us up on what's happened in the wizarding world and in the population, like belief and the shift in like what is now truth or what before wasn't.
Yeah. I was actually gonna expand on that. I feel like because the Wizarding World has gotten so much wider in the last book or two, like, it's no longer like, Harry's on the summer holidays, he's gonna go back to Hogwarts, there'll be a new professor. Like, now we want to know what's going on with wizarding politics and, you know, what's going on with Voldemort and everything. I feel like there's so much exposition that has to happen to sort of take us from Order of the Phoenix to Half-Blood Prince. And Jo does a really, really good job of sort of spreading it out. I feel like it's sort of spread out across, like, the first 5 or 6 chapters in this book, because, you know, we get it here from the Daily Prophet, but we're also going to get it from Dumbledore in the next chapter. We're going to get it from Molly Weasley in the next chapter. You know, Bill is going to come home from work and be like, oh my god, did you hear about Karkaroff? And we've already heard from the Cornelius Fudge and the other minister. So I feel like it's very judiciously done and sort of very impressive that she didn't just do a, like, here's an info dump. Here's what you missed on Glee.
Yeah. Especially because, like, the fact that the information is coming to us in Daily Prophet articles, I mean, in the 4th and 5th books, there is so much focus on Daily Prophet articles and how unreliable they are. So it means that as a reader, we're reading this information and we're kind of wondering, okay, like, is the Daily Prophet something we can trust now or is it not? And we're still sort of trying to figure it out. So it's kind of a more active, like, the reader is more actively involved and more questioning than if Harry just summarized.
Yeah, and Harry, then actually, you know, the points that immediately stand out to everyone is like, oh, how good is this information? He actually goes on in the next chapter to check with Dumbledore, are these things factually correct? Like, did you get in a fight with the minister? Like, is this leaflet actually useful? Should I follow it?
Yeah. And but it also, like, it's noteworthy that Harry's even receiving the Daily Prophet, right? That's
true.
Because...
As Sam put it, he learned how to read.
Exactly.
I did, like, you know, starting reading this chapter in preparation, and, like, the first line, I was like, oh, Harry, like, sit up straight, like, or lie back on a bed or something. Like, my back hurts from just reading about your terrible posture, sleeping, like, leaning into the window. It's like, oh, I'm too old to do this.
My first thought was, like, when reading this chapter was, I would not want to share a dorm with someone who snores loudly. So, like, apart from all the chaos that Harry causes, sleeping in his dorm would be an absolute nightmare to me.
I mean, they do have silencing charms, I guess.
Yeah, but do they know those? Harry knows those. Well, he knows Muffliato from, like, the Half-Blood Prince, so at this point he doesn't know them. So do other people know them?
we don't know that Harry always snores loudly, okay? I think that he just has allergies to all of the Dementor mist that's in the air. Like, that particulate matter that's really bad for your nasal passage. So I think that when Harry is not breathing in Dementor particles, he does not snore.
Back this up with evidence. When does he go out and sneeze when there's a Dementor around? I have not heard that.
I'm okay with allergic reaction, but I think it's probably all the rotten food in his room that's just, really impacting the air quality.
I think it's his bad posture. I think that, sometimes people snore more when they're in certain positions. I think it's because he's up against the window.
That's true. Okay, listeners, so multiple choice. Why do you think Harry is snoring? Is he A, just a guy who snores all the time, even though we never hear of him snoring in 7 books? Is it B, he's allergic to Dementor particles? Is it C, it's all the rotten food in his room? Or is it D, his terrible posture? I really like this multiple choice. Can we, add a poll on our website or something? I really want to.
You can definitely add a poll on, Instagram.
Yeah. But yeah, no, Aureo, you mentioned the food. I think, because we hear about, rotten apple cores in his room, I think this is Harry exacting a last petty revenge against the Dursleys. He's like, I'm gonna leave this house, and I hope it is infested by ants. So screw you, and Dursleys. Yes. He's getting back at them however he can.
Yeah, I have to say, this whole room is described as, super untidy, and I'm like, okay, he's a teenager, whatever, he's untidy, but, the food... that's
I can't deal
with. Just don't.
Yeah, agreed. My place is a complete mess, but no food lying around because gross.
Just don't do that. It's advice from the 3 broomsticks today. Don't leave your food lying around.
Also, don't leave it lying at the 3 broomsticks.
Also, yes.
Yes,
cleaning up.
Clean up after yourselves and tip the bar staff.
Yes. But I sort of jokingly put this in here, but I'm glad both of you really ran with this. So I said, did the Daily Prophet pay for this chapter since it's mostly a collection of newspapers? And then both you and Margarete and Irvin just really went with this.
I love this. I love that it's that chapters are sponsored by specific brands and products in the wizarding world. So Weasley's Wizard Weasels would be sponsoring the chapters where their products are used, or there are chapter titles that have brands in them, at Flourish and Blotz, or I don't know, maybe Madame Puddifoot's Cafe. Maybe Madame Puddifoot sponsored that disastrous chapter. But that wouldn't really be good for the image.
Yeah, they're going to want their money back for that sponsorship. They did not come off well.
Their competitor sponsored that chapter.
Maybe they were looking at Madame Rosmerta and was like, ooh, it's working out really well for her and the 3 broomsticks. They always go there and have butterbeers. We should try. And then they were like, oops, that didn't go well.
Yeah. The Beetle at Bay, sponsored by Madame Rosmerta. Yeah. The one that came to my mind is, there's a chapter later on in this book when Hermione, takes a fanged frisbee from a kid, and then Ron is like, awesome, I've always wanted one of these, and then Lavender laughs at him because he's being cute and funny. I'm like, that chapter is 100% sponsored by fanged frisbees. They, zoom in on the logo and everything.
Definitely.
It'll make you popular with the ladies.
Exactly.
Unless the lady is Hermione.
I can't reread the books now without looking for sponsored chapters. This is hilarious.
Yes, no, I feel like we're gonna always have to, consider this during our chapter episodes now. Who's the sponsor of this chapter?
Make it a bit. Make it a bit.
There we go.
Oh, twist our arms. Also, just saying, if any real-world corporations want to sponsor a chapter, we are very much open for business.
All of that.
Yeah, no, Aureo, I'm really glad that you caught that, because it's very funny.
Well, I was just, I put that in, I was like, ha ha ha, silly joke, and then I opened the doc again earlier, and I was like, oh, okay.
I mean, that is our MO around here.
This is how podcast episodes get made.
Yeah.
Yes, no joke is too silly to not get a half hour of discussion.
Well, talking of those newspaper outlets, the first one that we're getting sort of caught up on what happened in the fabled Hall of Prophecy, I thought it was always a good reminder to us as an audience that, not everyone in the wizarding world is actually, familiar with the Department of Mysteries and, in particular in this case, the Hall of Prophecy. So, because I think sometimes, with Deathly Hallows and like Horcruxes and stuff, we tend to forget that this is like very niche knowledge. So this was a good, easy way to be like, oh yeah, right. Other people may not actually know about this.
Yeah, I always thought it was one of Jo's strengths as a writer, that she's good at keeping track of who knows what in her world, that, once Harry and the reader find out about something, it doesn't become an open secret. Because a lot of other fantasy series really struggle with that. I know the one that always comes to my mind is the Aragon books, where, there's this whole thing, there's, these magical dragon soul balls or whatever it is, the Eldonari, and it's such a huge secret, we spent 3 books finding out about them, and then in the 4th book, everyone's like, oh yeah, the Eldonari, yeah, of course I knew about those.
No, I thought it must be quite, wild, because the general public doesn't know how prophecies are stored. As far as I know, they don't even know about the Hall of Prophecies. So if the article says someone stole a prophecy, it's so wildly abstract. They could be imagining that these seers are just chilling in a room somewhere, and then someone comes in and is like, "Give me your prophecy." I don't know. I don't know how to picture this if I didn't know that there was a Hall of Prophecies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they don't know that it's, small glass balls, right? It could be, scrolls or papyrus leaves or, whatever. That's a really good point. I'm really curious, how monumental this revelation is, because, the article says the disturbance was centered on the fabled Hall of Prophecy, though Ministry spokeswizards have hitherto refused even to confirm the existence of such a place. So, is it oh my god, there really were aliens at Area 51 level of, mind-boggling revelation? Or is it just, something casual being oh yeah, so, there are prophecies, we all, heard rumors about. I'm curious what the degree of severity is.
I mean, not even Dumbledore really believes in the power of prophecies until he actually hears one being made, right? He doesn't take the subject seriously. I think the general public would not necessarily think that prophecies are a thing unless they're superstitious. Mm-hmm. Unless the entire wizarding community is superstitious and Dumbledore is just an exception, which is probably the case.
I mean, I would think that, since divination is a real class at Hogwarts, even though Professor Trelawney isn't very good at it, but, even before Professor Trelawney, there are other divination teachers and it is a real class. So that makes me think that a good portion of wizarding society treats it as something that's real, something that's actually legit. But they might be surprised that there actually is a place where these prophecies are stored and that you could actually go and hear the prophecies. They might think that it's more oh, maybe you want to get your fortune told, you go to, someone who can look in a crystal ball or read palms or whatever. They might not realize that that there is a record of these prophecies.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, because, not to get bogged down in Department of Mysteries logistics, but, assuming that, only, real legit prophecies are stored here, I think to the average wizard, they think divination, they think, oh, someone looked in a crystal ball, and not that there's anything, this legit, because we don't know how, commonly these prophecies are made. And, if Trelawney's to be believed and these things skip 3 generations, most people will have never encountered, a seer giving a real prophecy, so they wouldn't even know that, there is a level of divination beyond the everyday.
Correct me if I'm misremembering, but, Ron's reaction when Harry tells him about, Trelawney making a prediction to him, doesn't seem like he fully is aware that that is a thing, and he's often our guidance to what the Wizarding Society as a whole is aware of or knows, or like their superstitions.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, like his reaction is just completely unimpressed.
Yeah. But I think also, us as a readers, we know all the other stuff that's in the Department of Mysteries, and the Hall of Prophecy is almost the least impressive one compared to some of the others. So it's quite interesting to consider that this is already such a big deal to the public.
Huh. I'm looking it up in Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh, yeah.
I think Harry gets cut off because Buckbeak just lost the trial.
Okay.
So we don't know what Ron's reaction is.
Yeah. Though I think it comes up later.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I remember him asking, do you reckon she was making a real prediction or something? Or I feel like I remember that, but
yeah,
I more remember Hermione dismissing it.
Yeah, but you would think that Hermione might have come across records of how real prophecies are made or whatever. I guess I don't know how well recorded this stuff is, or she might just not believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could get into a whole other discussion on how prophecies are made and how the little crystal balls are made. But
oh yeah, here. So it comes up in Goblet of Fire, actually.
Yeah.
When Harry's talking to Ron, and he's like, and remember what Professor Trelawney said at the end of last year? Oh, Harry, you aren't going to pay attention to anything that old fraud says.
But that's more to Trelawney and less about...
But that's Hermione. So yeah, we don't get Ron's perspective. Harry tells them that, blah, 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 she went into a trance, a real one, that night Wormtail escaped. There was silence in which Ron fidgeted absent-mindedly, and then they talk about Hedwig.
Yeah. But I guess if that had meant something to Ron, he could have, added to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's not clearly stated that he's not aware of it, but maybe reading between the lines.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to this article, I do find it quite interesting that the public is actually piecing, or maybe not the public, but this journalist, for the lack of better words, is piecing together what has happened fairly accurately. Especially considering that they did a 180 from Harry is the absolute worst to, oh, Harry may actually be good.
So, Aureo, are you saying that you don't know if the some people are, is, a fictional construct? Because I know that some less reputable news sources, when they want to make a point, they're just some people are saying, and those some people are themselves.
Yeah.
So do you think that's what's going on, or do you think people are actually calling Harry the Chosen One and everything?
I think it's probably more that the writer of this piece is doing the whole, some people are saying, pretending that people are saying something. But even all things considered, doing that whole 180 flip from just a day ago we all hated him, and now we're there was a prophecy, it's now stolen, and we think this means Harry is the Chosen One. It's fairly close to the truth.
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty logical leap to me.
That's true, but it's not like they loved logic the whole entire year before that.
No, but I think since they realized that Voldemort's back, it is a sort of helpful narrative to keep people from freaking out too much by being but maybe Harry is the Chosen One. While they were saying that Voldemort wasn't back, it was more convenient to say that he was awful. So I feel like it's just based on a little bit of logic and whatever makes, can get the right reaction out of people.
Yeah, I think that's what I was going to go with, sort of with my next point, is the very sensationalist nature of the article. I know, Irvin, you're going to say that, it's objectionable, but it's very, very mumuch not backed up by sources. It's some wizards. It's like a spokesperson who didn't give their name. Fair enough. But like, it seems very sensationalist to jump onto the bandwagon of, oh, okay, well, this is what we sort of pieced together, and now we're all saying Harry Potter might be the chosen one. There's a lot of sensationalism in this article, and I don't like it. But that's what we know the prophet to be.
Whereas I disagree with that. I think it's less sensationalist than speculative. I mean, like, it's also sensationalist, but I feel like they're doing what they can. Like, I think sort of reporting about Harry versus Voldemort in the Hall of Prophecy, like, that is clearly something newsworthy, and that is something that, like, the public is very interested in knowing. But the prophet also doesn't have that much information and can't get it. You know, Voldemort said no comment when, you know, they called, and Harry's not going to talk to them. So I think, like, all they can do is sort of talk to sources in the ministry and speculate. You know, it reminds me of the articles we're getting a lot about U.S. politics, where, like, we know Trump is going to get indicted tomorrow. Like, no one knows the details. Like, you know, we can't ask him, we can't ask the guy indicting him, so we're like, well, what could the charges be? What do our anonymous sources say they might be? You know, it's something that is newsworthy and that we want to know, but sort of there's no way to get more information.
I suppose. It doesn't make it a good article. It's like, it's really catering sort of to the sensationalism. You know, if they had just reported on, this is what happened at the ministry, someone broke in, something was reportedly stolen, but, like, you know, but the way it's written and the way it's sort of catering towards, okay, well, some are saying, and is he the chosen one? And the only one who will be able to rid us of Hugh must not be named. That is like pure speculation. I suppose sort of guessing and putting things together, but they don't have proof of that. Like, Dumbledore and Harry are at this point the only people who can actually back this up.
But that's why the title is interrogative. Like, you know, the subject is not the break-in. The subject is Harry Potter, the chosen one, which, like, yeah, if I'm a wizard living in, like, Wizarding Britain, I want to know if Harry Potter is the chosen one. Like, I would definitely read an article, like, you know, laying out the case for it, because,
Can I rely on this teenager?
Yeah, like, messiahs are important.
Okay, but newspapers, like sketchy newspapers, do this all the time, that they add a question mark to the title, and then they're like, well, we weren't trying to argue anything. It was a question mark. So
Tucker Carlson strategy, isn't it? So I'm just asking questions.
But anyway,
like, shut up, Tucker.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely speculative, but they don't speculate on any other possibilities. Like, they don't offer any potential counter narratives. So it's pretty clear to me that they like this narrative because it's the sort of thing that is going to get people to buy papers, and they're not going to talk to people who are like, actually, you know, it could be X, Y, or Z other thing. So I would say they're not doing their due diligence completely, even for something that's speculative.
Oh, what, do you think they should interview Mrs. Longbottom and she'd be like, I don't know, some people are saying it's Harry, but some people are saying my grandson Neville could be the chosen one.
Well, that would be accurate.
But, like, should we move on to the next article?
Yes.
Because I think we can all agree the Daily Prophet does what it does, and it always will.
Sure, we can move on. I find the Daily Prophet interesting because, like, it's not totally worthless as a source. Like, so I'm always curious, sort of like, well, what part of what it's saying can we trust and what can't we? Because I feel like it's facile to just dismiss everything it writes out of hand.
Aurelia, quick question. Are you familiar with Bild?
Yeah.
I feel like the Daily Prophet is Bild.
Maybe,
we don't know that.
Is it page 3 in existence? Just to catch the Americans up, Bild is like the biggest tabloid in Germany, and page 3 famously has naked women on it. So,
But it's also, they also do like a lot of investigative journalism, but it's always in, or at least most of the times, in a very sensationalist manner. Mm-hmm. Not always ethical.
Yeah, it's like The Sun in the UK.
But so you're saying that they like do like legit investigations. They do. Yeah, I mean, there were lots of scandals around the newspaper this year, but just from sort of the way that this article is written, it reminds me a lot of those sort of speculative, tabloid-y, but not quite tabloid-y, but yeah, that kind of
yes. So it's like there's things where like Bild, like the German newspaper, has definitely broken news before any other newspaper, and it was real factual news, turned out to be true. But then there's also so many occasions where they've just printed out lies. So it's like, okay.
Okay, so I'm getting like New York Post vibes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's talk about Scrimgeour. I like Scrimgeour.
Do you really?
Yeah, I think he's fascinating. The first time I read about him, I just, like, obviously not in this chapter, it's in the chapter before. No, first chapter. I just thought this is going to be so cool. And yeah, I do get like a little bit misty-eyed when he dies. One of those characters that for some reason I enjoy.
I don't think I have ever heard that perspective in my, 20 years in the fandom.
I mean, I can see wanting to know more about him because he does seem quite interesting. And we really don't get to know that much about him other than he was an Aureo and now he's the minister and he's getting in a fight with Dumbledore because he wants Harry to walk in and out of the ministry. It's like, yeah.
And then he heroically dies.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess.
I really like him as a character, precisely because he's such an asshole, but then he heroically dies. And it's such, cognitive dissonance, being like, oh, I hate him, but I admire that.
I don't think I would go as far to call him an asshole, because he is actually trying to get society prepared for a war and, making...
By bullying a 17-year-old and... studying Dumbledore's trinkets?
No, but he, I think the leaflet that we see in this chapter is probably, I would argue that's down to him being the minister. That he's like, okay, we need to take this seriously.
I don't know. I see him as a politician.
I mean, he's better leader than Fudge.
Yeah, and I see him as a politician. I know not everything he does is to the liking of us as the reader or as to the liking of the main characters. But I see his point in some of the things, not in the bullying of Harry, but definitely in looking through the will of or at least the artifacts that are being passed on. I don't obviously agree with all of his perspectives, but I do understand him as a character, I think, or at least I assume I do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Irvin, you as a much more grown-up person now than being 17, can you imagine being someone in your 50s and you're in charge of a country that is at war and, there's this 3 17-year-olds in front of you and they're like, these are apparently the people that are going to go save the world. Would you trust teenagers?
I would not.
I mean, I wouldn't try to bully them. I know better than to try bullying teenagers. That never works out.
I mean, fair enough, but I also get that he's trying to figure out more what's going on. He's like, okay, I feel like the government should be more in the know of what we can do against Voldemort.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like my strategy with teenagers is to treat them like real people and not try to throw my weight around as an adult. And just first of all, you're not going to get anywhere, especially with a trio of Gryffindor teenagers. I mean, that's just
true.
Bang your head against the wall, you'll get better results. And then he just starts bullying them. There's really sort of no other way to do it when he's poking Harry with his wand. No. I don't super mind anything Scrimgeour does in this book, but in, The Last Will of Albus Dumbledore, nah, I'm not about it.
Okay, well, agree to disagree. Can we talk about Amelia Bones? You had a point about her?
Yeah, so Scrimgeour being appointed as minister, I will say, like, makes a lot of sense. You know, sort of aside from his personal issues, like, yeah, if you're at war, you would want the head of the Aureo office to be Minister of Magic at the time. And I have to think that, like, maybe he wasn't the first choice. Like, it probably would have gone to Amelia Bones, because she was the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, so, like, she probably would have been tipped to be the next Minister of Magic. But, you know, small problem, she was just murdered. So, yeah, it goes to Scrimgeour.
Do you think that could be why Voldemort cared so much about murdering her?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I definitely think that, like, murdering her was a very important strategic move by Voldemort. Because, yeah, like, now that he's out in the open, he wants the Ministry in total disarray. So, yeah, just completely f***ing with the line of succession for Minister of Magic makes a lot of sense. And I think Voldemort also thought that Amelia Bones was very fair. And he doesn't want someone who's, like, very fair and impartial in charge of magical law enforcement. Like, he wants someone, you know, corrupt and blackmailable.
Yeah. So he's got his meeting. I had assumed that it was about the safety measures, like mentioned in the next article. But I think you're right, Irvin, that it's about Harry being poster boy.
Yeah, so we actually hear Harry discuss it with Dumbledore much later in the book, where Dumbledore says, "Within hours of Scrimgeour's appointment, we met, and he demanded that I arrange a meeting with you." "So that's why you argued," Harry blurted out. "It was in the Daily Prophet." "The Prophet is bound to report the truth occasionally," said Dumbledore, "if only accidentally." Yes, that was why we argued.
Okay, that makes sense. I think I was just looking at the chapter because literally the next article or next paragraph is all the safety measures in Hogwarts that are now happening. So, yes, but in the bigger picture, he had multiple reasons to talk to Dumbledore, apparently.
Yeah, I like that it's kind of like a mini mystery of why they argued within this book, which, I mean, obviously it is so completely eclipsed by everything else going on, but I remember when I was reading it, I was so intrigued. I was intrigued by Scrimgeour in general, because we meet him in The Other Minister, right? But for, like, 2 pages. But pretty much all we get out of him is that, like, he's brusque and humorless and, like, you know, kind of, So I really enjoyed wondering, like, what he'd be like. Because Fudge was such, like, a huge part of Order of the Phoenix. He was such, like, an important character. So I assume Scrimgeour would be as well as the next minister. And so, yeah, I definitely spent the first half of Prince being like, all right, so, like, what's this minister like? Like, when's the other shoe gonna drop? I'm curious, like, were the rest of you also, like, super into the question of why he and Dumbledore were arguing, or just, like, couldn't be bothered?
I was too young to remember.
I don't think I was. I do remember mysteries that I was intrigued about. I don't think I was, because I think it was, to me, it sort of got lost in the subtext or in the sort of shaping of the minister in Harry's head, that, like, the first thing you hear is that he argued with Dumbledore, and obviously we like Dumbledore. So, you know, to me, it was more like, okay, well, if he argued with Dumbledore, then he can't be nice, kind of thing.
Right. Well, it was clear we're not on his side. Like, whatever's going on, we're not on his side. But I was definitely curious what they argued about, especially because it's one of 2 things that Dumbledore won't answer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, rather because Harry doesn't ask. Like, so Harry asks about the hand, and Dumbledore's like, for another day. And then Harry's like, do I dare ask about the fight? No, I don't. Moving on.
Yeah, I think also it's like a testament to the writing and also how much goes on in this book that I'm very sure that I forgot, like, 2 chapters on that was even a thing that happened, because we just had other things going on.
Fair enough.
At least the first time reading.
Yeah. Listen, it's because I am a messy bitch and I like drama, so I'm like, if 2 important characters are fighting, I was like, what's going on? What's happening? Like, what's it all about? I'm that way in real life too, just so you know.
I do know.
Never doubt it.
But yeah, Margarete, you had good points about Hogwarts and its role in all of these articles.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of always the case, that Hogwarts has this very massive standing in in British Wizarding Society, but all of these security measures, I mean, obviously they need to be told to people, but they're really only relevant to parents. And I would think that parents would be told, these are the new security measures at Hogwarts. There'd be like a mass email per owl or something. But the fact that, it's being shared in like a newspaper, I don't know. I think it highlighted to me this massive standing that Hogwarts has in Wizarding Society. And yet at the same time, there must be a massive part of the population that's like, okay, well, why do we care?
I completely disagree with that.
Yeah?
Well, because Hogwarts is the only school in Britain. Like, if you have a kid who is not homeschooled, then that kid goes to Hogwarts.
So it's definitely relevant for all the parents. Absolutely. I do think they would be informed again.
Well, it's relevant for all the parents, the grandparents, like sort of anyone who has a kid between 11 and 17 in their family is going to be very interested in this. So that is like,
yeah, I guess.
I assume most of the wizarding population, especially considering they're more traditional in terms of like nuclear families and everyone has kids. I think like almost everyone in Wizarding Society would be like, what's happening at Hogwarts?
Yeah, I mean, I think even if you're not a parent, like, since everyone went to Hogwarts, like, I remember, like, when COVID happened and, like, my college sent out a email about, like, what their COVID measures were. And I wasn't in college anymore, but I wanted to read the email and see what they were doing because I was just curious. So I think that, like, I could imagine even if you are not a parent yet, but you've been to the school and you're like, well, I want to make sure that the school is safe because you have fond memories of it or whatever. So I think everyone would be kind of a little bit curious. Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I graduated high school, I definitely, like, kept up with the news about it. When our headmaster resigned in disgrace because of a cheating scandal, when there was school slut day to protest the dress code. Like, I definitely kept up with the news from my high school.
It sounds like you kept up with the drama from your high school.
Yeah, with the news. That's what I said.
I think maybe if we also don't see the rest of the article, it would be logical for part of the article to also cover, security measures will also be implemented at the ministry or at St. Mungo's, the other two big institutions. I don't know. I feel like that would make sense to me if the article that the part of the article that we don't see would also maybe expand on that a little bit. Then I could justify why there's, a massive part about it.
I mean, listen, it comes down to think of the children.
Yeah.
Like, especially when you only have the one school, so you're thinking of literally all the children. Yeah. Like, that's definitely newsworthy.
I also just really like that he's like, and we're not going to tell you for obvious reasons. So I'm just like, good. You learned your lessons.
Right, how much you want to bet that if it was Fudge, he would have been like, oh no, so our security measures involve 2 Aurors stationed on the 7th floor corridor on alternating nights.
And the password is...
We will not be using the mentors.
Yeah, so definitely no one is going to get in.
I also really enjoyed that Augusta was part of this interview. Like the one source that the Daily Prophet has is Mrs. Augusta Longbottom.
Hell yeah. I mean, I'm just picturing that, like, Augusta is trying to, like, brag far and wide about, like, Neville. She's, like, calling up the Daily Prophet. She's like, so did you know that my grandson, Neville Longbottom, the son of Aurors, Frank and Alice Longbottom, fought alongside with Harry Potter, the Department of Mysteries? Like,
cute.
You could write an article about that, I'm just saying. And the editors are just like, well, we're going to stick a pin in that, but while you're here, what do you think about the security measures? And she's like, oh, well, I'm so glad you asked, because, see, my grandson Neville, a good friend of Harry Potter's, incidentally.
Yeah.
Oh, I am so here for it.
I can totally imagine, like, before Frank Longbottom had the Cruciatus curse on him, that, like, his mom would just be, like, calling up the Daily Prophet, like, every day, being like, did you hear that my son, the Auror, Frank Longbottom, did XYZ? And the Daily Prophet, like, has been so happy happy to not have to deal with her calls, and then they're like, oh no, her grandson did something important. Now we have to deal with her again.
Oh my god, I love this theory so much.
But no slandering Augusta. She's fantastic.
She is. There is, however, an alternate explanation, which is that there's an elaborate relationship between Augusta Longbottom and Barnabas Cuff, the editor of the Daily Prophet. You know what? I'm sure that they went to Hogwarts together. Maybe they were in the Slug Club. You know, I'm sure that they might have dated.
Ooh,
and you know, it was on again, off
and
again for a while.
And then she got super mad at him last year when he was slandering Harry Potter, and she wasn't here for it. Didn't she also stop reading the Daily Prophet? Isn't that part of it? Doesn't Neville say that?
Yes, and I'm sure she let him know in no uncertain terms that she stopped reading it. I just have one very important question. What is their ship name? It can either be Long Cuff or, my preference, Cuffed Bottom.
Well, one of those sounds inappropriate.
Or Barney Bottom.
Ooh, Barnabottom. I like that. Yeah, listeners, this is another thing. We need to decide this ship name here and now. So, it's another poll. What is their ship name?
Yes.
Listen, we are asking the important questions here. Why does Harry snore? And what is the ship name for Augusta Longbottom and Barnabas Cuff? I mean, I feel like knowing these things are why listeners tune in.
Sure. Right. I think that brings us to the 7 ingredients of today's special.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh my god, is it a poll?
Well, there are 7 things. So. Typically, it takes a little bit more digging to find 7 things, and sometimes a lot of qualifying. You've listened to us before, so. But this time it was really easy because there's a whole leaflet with 7 tips. So there you go. Job done.
Yeah.
So the new poll is, which of the 7 is the most dumb?
Okay. That's good.
Ooh. Okay, I have my nomination.
Me too.
Okay, I think the dumbest tip of the 7 is the second one. Particular care should be taken during the hours of darkness. Wherever possible, arrange to complete journeys before night has fallen. Yeah, okay. Don't go outside after dark. Totally a feasible measure to take for the indefinite future.
Yeah.
Mine would be number 6. Should the dark mark appear over any dwelling place or other building, do not enter, but contact the Aureo office immediately. That's like the duh. Of course, like it just seems so obvious.
But they're not wrong. That is sound advice, even if it's unnecessary.
What's yours, Sophia?
I don't have them in front of me, so I might need a quick rundown of what they are.
Okay, quick rundown. Don't leave the house alone. Don't go out after dark. Review security arrangements around your house. Make sure family members know shield charms, disillusionment charms, and sight-along apparition. Number 4, security questions with close friends and family in case of polyjuice. Number 5, if a family member, colleague, friend, or neighbor is acting strange, contact the magical law enforcement squad. They may have been put under the Imperious. Number 6 is don't enter buildings with the dark mark over them. And number 7 is the unconfirmed sightings suggest Death Eaters may be using Inferi. Any sighting of an Inferious should be reported to the Ministry immediately, assuming you live to tell the tale.
Well, okay, to be different than you guys, I'm going to say the security question, because I think Dumbledore says this, where it's like, well, wouldn't you just ask the person before that you were going to become, or like, wouldn't you use the Imperious Curse or Veritaserum or something to like figure out what the security question is? So I don't know.
Yeah, to find out their jam preferences.
Exactly. To be like, okay, what is your security question? What is the answer? All right. So I'm going to go with that one.
Yeah, because surely if you are going to polyjuice someone, you're also making sure that the person you're, pretending to be, the actual person, is not also coming into the scene. So you're just like making sure that they are somewhere taken care of. So yeah, I think that's a good good point. I'm also just going for another one that wasn't mentioned and say the first one. You're not advised not to leave the house alone because I live alone and I would by that.
Well, don't you dare leave the house.
So I don't think that's very feasible.
Yeah, see, that gets back to my earlier point that, like, everyone in the wizarding world lives in families. Like, there are no bachelors or bachelorettes.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, what happens at Hogwarts, of interest to everybody.
I do think this leaflet is quite funny. Like, imagine a Death Eater picking this up somewhere and reading it and just being like, oh my goodness. It's going to be so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, do you think the ones in Azkaban, like, you know, asked the minister, like, could you give us a copy of the leaflet for some light reading? And then they're just, like, giggling the whole time.
Because also the, like, leaving the house alone one, it's like, okay, if you come across a Death Eater or, like, multiple Death Eaters, it really doesn't matter if there are two of you. Like, I don't know. It just, like, doesn't make that much of a difference.
I mean, it might make a difference. You just need to disapparate faster than the other guy.
But you could arguably also do that alone, so...
Yeah.
Disapparating.
Depends how many Death Eaters you run into. So...
Also true.
So yeah, on the whole, I think they tried, but it's not super useful.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, you know, they clearly, had to do something like this. Like, it makes sense that they did it, but yeah, it's dumb. We can move on from the Daily Prophet and all of their highly entertaining and occasionally informative articles to talk about Harry and Dumbledore. So Harry isn't packing in this because he doesn't dare hope for good things anymore. And, like, when I read this, I was so worried that it was a harbinger of another full-blown book of Harry being angsty as hell. Like, look, I'm here for Harry being angsty in Order of the Phoenix. Like, I will defend that. I think it's a good decision and a good, like, authorial choice. But, like, 3 big, long books of angsty Harry, that would have gotten old. So I was very relieved.
I agree. I also understand Harry because it's only been 2 weeks and he's never gotten away from the Dursleys this early. So I do sort of see where Harry's like, well, I kind of just want to have confirmation this is actually happening and not trying to get my hopes up and then be like, should have known. I actually have to stay here longer. So I do think I can really relate with Harry here.
Yeah. Especially because after, like, reading all of this, like, these leaflets about, like, people could be impersonating other people, like, it kind of makes sense that he would be like, well, how do I know that it's actually Dumbledore? Because he doesn't.
He should have asked Dumbledore what his favorite flavor of jam was.
Yeah, but he doesn't know the answer to
know.
that.
Exactly. But he doesn't know. He should have asked before. Yeah. He should have asked Dumbledore what he sees in, like, the Mirror of Erised or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something he already knows. Because otherwise, he, like, going back to the letter from Dumbledore being like, yes, that sounds cool. Also, what security question am I supposed to ask you? It's like, well, that's not good because that could be intercepted.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it stood out to me a couple of times before, like a couple of rereads before this time rereading this chapter, but I never really understand why Harry's like so keen of locking Hedwig up in the cage, like because it says it's the only sort of effort he made towards the possibility of leaving. And I'm just like, but like we know Hedwig is really good at finding Harry wherever he is. Like just, don't lock your bird up in a tiny, tiny cage. Just, let her fly. She'll find you. Like, that's the least of your worries, I think.
This is the foreshadowing to the next book, where he keeps her in the cage and then she dies.
Yes. So I think it's because we've been doing all these chapter 3s, but my thought immediately went to Chamber of Secrets when he nearly forgot Hedwig at the Dursleys. So I think he still feels bad about that and is atoning for it. So whenever he's going to leave the Dursleys, he's like, okay, first thing, I'm a pack Hedwig. Like, you're the first thing I grab. Like, don't worry. I won't forget you again.
I'm going to argue back, though, because the point with Chamber was that she had to be locked up the whole time and she wasn't allowed to fly, whereas he doesn't have those restrictions anymore, so he would still have been better to just have her, live her best life outside, not being locked up. Because he could still forget taking the cage, and that's the thing that almost happened in Chamber of Secrets.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm just here to liberate Hedwig out of her tiny cage.
Can't bear to be separated from her. Maybe that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Separation anxiety.
Yeah, maybe he was worried that it would be another summer where, he didn't hear anything from anyone for 6 weeks, so he was like, all right, it's me and my owl, us against the world.
Yeah.
But then also, how is he going to hear from anyone if he doesn't let his owl fly?
Other people have owls.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think this is, thinking about that parallel to book 2, Sam was saying in the summary that this isn't really, it doesn't really ring with book 2, but I disagree because I think that there's this big difference here. It's like, it's a shift between in book 2 where he doesn't have any contact with Hogwarts. And in this book, almost immediately, he has this contact with Dumbledore, who basically represents Hogwarts to him. And he's like, wait, this feels fake. And Dumbledore actually comes to him, and it's like Hogwarts has come to Privet Drive. So it is kind of a nice parallel with book 2.
Mm-hmm.
I do really like that. I think Sam, in his summary, meant the point of Dumbledore arriving in Privet Drive, which he does in the first book, and that whole part. But I think I really like your theory, or your argument.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, talk of Dumbledore arriving. So we're going to put this in the Dumbledore's Got Style section. But I like that Dumbledore decides to meet up with someone at 11 p.m. on a Friday to go out on an adventure. That is a man after my own heart. I do the exact same thing.
I would absolutely hate that.
Me too. Just saying, Irvin, please do not show up at my house at 11 p.m. on a Friday night.
Either I will not be here, or I will sleep in.
Okay, fine. I'm changing my plans for tonight. But that's the perfect time to meet up if you're going to go out dancing at midnight.
No, the perfect time to meet up is at 9 p.m. so you can be home by 1 a.m.
But why would you want to be home by 1 a.m.?
To sleep, Irvin, to sleep.
I was going to say, normal people sleep, Irvin. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, whereas stylish people like me and Dumbledore don't.
It's true.
I think, though, it's really funny because, this is the height of summer in Britain where, it gets dark by around 10-ish p.m., probably a bit later this early in the summer. But, immediately don't go out after dark, and Dumbledore's like, so we're going to definitely meet up when it's for sure dark.
And I'm going to darken the street outside.
Yes, and I'm going to show up alone.
And I'm going to be wearing a cloak because it's the middle of summer and it's definitely not warm outside.
I guess there's spells for that.
I do really, really like that description. A tall figure in a long billowing cloak was walking up the garden path. I read that and it just gave me goosebumps. I think we've just got this image of Dumbledore. It's obviously a throwback to the first book, and it's a beautiful sentence and it made me happy.
Okay, you guys, I have to run. I'm sorry. I know, so fast.
We're sorry to lose you. This is fun.
I know, I have so many thoughts about later on, but okay.
Bye,
all right, I'll tell you guys about them later. Okay.
Yeah, leave comments on the episode page.
Yeah, I can't do that right now. I will leave voice notes to you.
And I'll be like, comment from Sophia.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah. All right, listeners. Well, we've found Dumbledore, but we've lost Sophia, unfortunately. So, carrying on. So when Dumbledore shows up, Harry, sees the light go out, and he's like, oh my god, he's coming, I gotta pack! And that is so relatable. There's nothing worse than someone being punctual when they are coming to your home. that's just borderline inconsiderate. Like, if you're supposed to show up at 11, that means at like 10:58, I am washing dishes and trying to find my floor.
So you are actually not having that much in common with Dumbledore, then?
Oh.
I mean, we have the important part in common, which is that we would show up at 11 p.m. to go out. It's just that if we had agreed to show up at 11 p.m., I would have gotten there about a quarter past.
Yeah, I'm aware. It stressed me out.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Because I like to be punctual like Dumbledore.
I get it, though. I'm leaving tomorrow to go on like a 3-week trip. And tonight I'm doing a podcast recording. Tomorrow I'm going to Berlin Pride. I have not packed.
Yeah.
And I'm leaving at like 8 o'clock tomorrow. Or like 6 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So I have a lot to do, and I guess I'll do that whenever. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, same. I'm also leaving at like 9 o'clock tomorrow to skip town. And I'm about halfway packed.
Well, that's more than me.
Well, if we're sharing, I just got back from holiday. I'm not going anywhere, so I'm just going to be home.
Sounds good too.
Although Berlin Pride sounds cool.
I'm very excited. This is my first year going, and it's going to be so much fun.
Margarete, where are you traveling?
I am going all over the place. It's not a single destination trip. My summer holiday is very spread apart, like pulled apart these days. Just this year. Next year I'll do a long trip. But this year I'm just hopping from place to place, from visit to visit, from family to family. So yeah, it's going to be a busy time.
Sounds fun.
It's going to be fun. It's gonna, yeah, lots of train rides, but it's definitely going to be nice. Anyway, podcast.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's sort of like hilarious to read about Harry just, willy-nilly lobbing things into his trunk. I'm just like, the mess. Like...
And then he's got a telescope on him the entire conversation.
Yeah, a telescope and trainers.
Which again also convinces me that when Dumbledore is like, so are you packed? That he's like, surely he knows the answer.
Yeah, he knows.
Like he's holding items. But yeah, another thing that I think was hilarious in this, I mean, there's so many things that's so hilarious in this chapter, but like, Harry not informing anyone that he's expecting a visitor at 11 at night. She's just like, yeah, who needs to know? Oh, shit, I maybe should have mentioned it.
Maybe to those people whose house I live in.
Yeah, that would have maybe been a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, for all that the Dursleys are terrible and deserve it, like, Harry is not a good house guest. Or, like, resident at this point
He's
in time.
like, bye, I'm leaving you moldy apples.
Like, either he causes some kind of drama or, he doesn't inform them of anything.
Yeah. And, like, the Dursleys are like, well, teenagers.
He always informs us when his headmaster comes around to check on him.
Which is such a regular occasion.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But once we get to meet Dumbledore, and so do the Dursleys, it's perfect. It's wonderful. Like,
it is so much fun.
It is so much fun.
Yeah, and I wanted to know what you guys think, but this time reading it, I thought for the first time, it's like, I think there's an argument to be made, and I know, Irvin, you've had some points about Dumbledore being petty, but I think there's also a bit of an argument to be made that maybe Dumbledore is really working hard to have a light-hearted mood because his last interaction with Harry wasn't the greatest.
Ooh.
Like he's trying to make Harry feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm reading too much into it, so I just wanted to hear your thoughts.
I think that there are lots of things in play at this point in time. He's obviously coming to talk about a really deep, dark topic right now that, like, last time obviously escalated. He's going to talk about Sirius's death, so he's trying to make it as comfortable as possible. At the same time, he already knows that he's only got a year left to live, so maybe he's also got the attitude of, well, there's no point in being mopey, so we're just going to have some fun. I think it's also just Dumbledore's charm and, like, approach to bit of a precarious situation. He doesn't know how the Dursleys are going to react, and he knows about things, but he doesn't actually know them. And I don't know, I think he does a lot of things very smoothly in this chapter. I disagree with some of the things that he does. He doesn't need to physically abuse them. But yeah, I think there are lots of things in play with his attitude.
Yeah, I agree. I think Dumbledore would have behaved pretty much the exact same way, like, even absent trying to put Harry at ease. I think this is sort of how he operates. Sort of like nothing that Dumbledore does in this scene, like, felt in any way out of character or, acting or anything. So, yeah, I think he's just being Dumbledore.
I do slightly disagree. Like, I don't think it feels out of character, but do feel like he's dialed it up a little bit. Does that make sense? Like, he's being purposely more sort of funny than he could have otherwise been.
I think so. I think you've got a point. Like, he is dialing it up, but I don't think it's out of character at all.
Yeah, I think he dials it up as much as he can. Like, I feel like he is so often on his best behavior.
Yeah.
As the great and the good Dumbledore, that I think when he has a chance to let loose a bit, he definitely does. Because we see this in Prince's Tale, right? When it's just him and Snape and he doesn't have to be quite so, venerable and wise. Like, he's funny. He makes jokes. Like, he likes hamming it up a bit.
I mean, he almost told a joke at one of the welcome feasts. It's like, there was
Exactly.
And Minerva was like, shut up.
Right, and McGonagall was like, no jokes for you.
Also, no dirty jokes. There's 11 years here.
We don't know that the joke was dirty.
I think it's, like, sort of confirmed.
It's heavily implied.
Yeah. That is quite a dirty joke, so.
I mean, now I want to hear it.
There are some, like, versions of what it could have been, I think, out on the internet. But I don't think we have
Yeah, I know MuggleNet definitely, like, ran a thing a million years ago. They're like, complete the joke.
Yeah. I don't think there's a
confirmed
version of, like, how it's supposed to.
Yes. So we're gonna sort of circle back to Dumbledore's behavior in this chapter, but I think it's important to talk about all of the many commonalities we find between Uncle Vernon and Albus Dumbledore. Because here, it turns out that both of them have a very bushy mustache in common.
That's so many things, Irvin.
Well, yes, it is. So, listeners, here is another challenge for you, and this is not a poll, this is a fill-in-the-blank. What are the other commonalities between Vernon Dursley and Albus Dumbledore? So, I thought of two. First, they're both kind of a dick to Harry in Order of the Phoenix.
Ooh, harsh blow towards Dumbledore.
I mean, he tries to ignore Harry and pretend he doesn't exist, which is one of Vernon's favorite strategies.
Yeah. I mean, as much as it pains me, I can't argue against it.
Yeah, same.
And the other commonality is they are the only living people with whom Petunia has, like, talked and communicated about her sister and about magic and stuff.
Ooh. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, Vernon and Dumbledore. So much in common.
So much. Find more things, please. Well,
I mean, I have three.
I have one, and it's my next point.
Ooh, okay.
Vernon is wearing a puce dressing gown. Now, I had to Google. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the word puce. I was not. I Googled it. It's sort of the color that I'm using in this doc. It's sort of this off pink-ish color. I don't know. So, you know how Dumbledore likes to wear purple gowns, or just generally long flowy cloaks. Vernon is also wearing a dressing gown that is a color. So that's my point. But I googled the color, and it's also puce is also another word for flea, and a wonderful Wikipedia article said, the color is said to be the color of bloodstains on linen or bed sheets, even after being laundered, from flea droppings or after a flea has been crushed. Which, good choice of color, Joe.
Ew.
I was like, I think I can never look at puce the same way again. That was information that was like both interesting, and I also would like to immediately delete from my brain again.
Sorry.
Yes. But Dumbledore is never associated with the color puce.
He's just associated with having colorful things.
Yes. Because I looked it up when you said this, and Uncle Vernon's face is very often puce,
yeah.
So that's why he has a puce dressing gown. It's to match his complexion. And then I think once or twice we see Fudge turn a shade of puce.
Well, that makes sense.
So it's mostly describing not so great people.
Yes. So, Joe, why do you hate the color puce? Inquiring minds want to know.
Because of the fleas.
Okay, well, moving on from Vernon's stylish choices, Dumbledore's line to Vernon is so good. So Vernon opens the door and he's like, your agapanthus are flourishing. And so I did some Googling, and this is awesome. And the agapanthus is a flower known as the lily of the Nile. So
Ooh.
Dumbledore is literally saying your lily is flourishing.
I like it.
Right? So, like, my take on this is that he's trying to say that Harry, the son of Lily, that he's flourishing despite the Dursleys' best efforts.
I don't know if he is saying that, but I do think we can interpret it into the situation. Okay.
You don't think Dumbledore is being deliberate about, flowery language?
I mean, first of all, it's luck that flower is actually there. But, so I do like the meaning, and I could see Dumbledore knowing the meaning, but if there wasn't an agapanthus flowering there, he would have not said it, so...
Yeah. I mean, Dumbledore's quick. Like, I don't think, he showed up with prepared remarks or anything, but, like, he saw the agapanthus and he's like, haha, I know what that means.
I can use this.
I can definitely see that, but, like, it's not like... I don't think he tried to come up with a way of bringing up Lily, and he was like, oh, thank God there's literally a lily growing that I can work in here. I think he just sort of seized the moment as it presented to it.
I can see that.
Yeah.
But it is pretty cool.
Yeah, the name of the flower agapanthus, it's from the Greek word agape, which means love. So it is also literally named like the love flower.
Mm.
It's really interesting considering these days we use lilies for funerals.
Wow. You went there.
Well, it's because Lily is dead.
I went more sort of generic, but okay.
I have an answer for that.
All right, Irvin.
But yeah, I thought this was so clever. Like, I love, like, the little tidbits Joe drops in terms of, like, the language of flowers and everything, and this is just always one that, like, sort of was flashing a big neon sign of, like, this is awesome!
Yeah, like, I'm fairly convinced this is on purpose from, like, Joe's viewpoint, or, like...
Oh, yeah.
Because we know that flowers are important in general in this book series, so I don't think she would have picked a flower at random. But, yeah. Is
yeah, I mean, the lily, the love flower is flourishing at the Dursleys. Yeah, it's definitely deliberate.
So I have a fun story about this line. It is, for some reason, a line that stood out to me for years. Of like all the random lines I could remember from Harry Potter, and specifically from the German audiobook, this line has weirdly stuck in my head. And one of the reasons was that I didn't know what an agapanthus was for a very long time. And so I always pictured, and like for a very long time means for years. I found out what an agapanthus was about maybe 2 years ago. And up until that point, I had pictured Dumbledore arriving on the Dursley doorstep and telling Vernon that his agapanthus is flourishing. And I assumed that agapanthus is either a word for a mustache or a word for like, I don't know, because they do describe Vernon as like being rather like large, as I don't know, muscles or fat or something. I don't know. I had never associated it with a plant. And about 2 years ago, my mom dropped the word, and I was like, "What is that?" And she showed me the plant, and it's been a bit life-changing. Yeah, I thought it was like a weirdly hidden insult. And
yeah.
I was gonna say, so you assumed Dumbledore was just like straight up rude from the first second.
Not necessarily. It might have been like a compliment to.
Oh no, I assumed the exact same thing when I read it the first time. Yeah, be like, Vernon, your belly is flourishing. I just have been in the Potter fandom a long, long time, so I think I looked this up when I was like 18, 19, and I was like, whoa!
I was very happy when you picked up the line, because as soon as I saw it was going to be this chapter, I was like, I have to talk about this line. It's my favorite line. So here we are.
Yeah. No, it is such a great line. Like, the amount of, like, analysis, symbolism, like, stuff going on here, it's like, yeah. We got a lot out of it.
Yeah. I picked out 3 quotes here from the chapter that I thought were particularly well done with, describing or sort of weaving in the horrible treatment of the Dursleys towards like Harry, but in a like fun way, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So I think I'm just going to read them so it makes sense. So the first one is, long experience had taught him to remain out of arm's reach of his uncle whenever possible, is when Harry comes down the stairs. Mm-hmm. Which, implies quite a lot of physical abuse, potentially. Mm-hmm. Second one, even Uncle Vernon could sense that here was a man whom it would be very difficult to bully. Which is like, yeah, we know he likes to bully people.
And we know that he insulted Dumbledore in book 1, quote, never insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me.
Yes.
Which, I think maybe now he's thinking back to that scene many years ago on the island, and he's thinking, okay, maybe I shouldn't. But like, maybe I shouldn't insult him.
So this is the crackpot old fool.
Yeah. And then the last one I have is, these words seemed to rouse Uncle Vernon. It was clear that as far as he was concerned, any man who could look at Harry and say, excellent, was a man with whom he could never see eye to eye. It's like, yeah, this is like really well done.
It is. I think it serves an important purpose in the story, right? Because so much of this chapter is about the Dursleys getting their comeuppance from Dumbledore. And I feel like in order for us to root for Dumbledore against the Dursleys, because he is the aggressor, by and large, in this chapter, like, we have to be reminded of just how terrible the Dursleys are. And so, yeah, like, a few lines like these, and we're like, oh, yeah, we do hate them, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, after Uncle Vernon and Dumbledore meet, and Vernon is deciding whether to bully him or not, Petunia and Dumbledore meet. And it struck me this time, is this the first time that Aunt Petunia has actually met Dumbledore in person? Like, I wonder how he matches up to her expectations.
I think we can assume it is the first time. At least we're not aware of another time she could have met him.
Mm-hmm.
I think she is obviously thinking sort of like, okay, this is that man that I wrote the letters to. But at the same time, she must also be thinking, like, how is he seeing me right now? Is he seeing me, like, is he seeing my sister in me? Is he seeing the little girl who wrote him that letter? Because he's clearly referencing that right now. Or is he seeing me in my apron and rubber gloves? Like, how am I perceived by Dumbledore?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like that you put this question, because I didn't think about it. And maybe it's less Petunia that this is true for, but I would assume definitely for Vernon Dumbledore would probably come across as exactly how he pictures that kind of people, because he's wearing like, robes and everything. So with Petunia, I'm not as sure, because she would have maybe seen other students, or when, they dropped Lily off at the train station, see other parents. So she may have actually been more aware of the wizards and how they dress, or how well they not dress in muggle clothes, that sort of thing. But I'm not sure.
I think it's more that Petunia, she has an expectation of Dumbledore beyond, like, generic wizard. Like, to Vernon, this guy is another wizard from that freak magic school, and, like, that's all there is to it. But Petunia, she, like, knows some of who Dumbledore is. She wrote to him. I'm sure Lily, talked about Dumbledore over summer vacation. So I feel like for Petunia, it's not just the like, oh, here's a wizard. It's like, oh, here is Dumbledore, like that guy.
The wizard.
Yeah. And the line that Dumbledore says here, we have corresponded, of course. Like, this is so brilliant from Joe. Like, because Harry and the reader were on the same page. We're like, of course she means the Howler and the letter on the doorstep. Like, that's an odd way of saying you corresponded, but Dumbledore is being sassy. And of course, none of us realized at the time that it's because Petunia wrote to Dumbledore as a little kid begging to go to Hogwarts, and that's probably what Dumbledore is referring to.
And not only that, we only find out a book and a half later.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's one of those like tiny, tiny mysteries that Joe resolves in Prince's Tale, where it's like, yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolute brilliant foreshadowing. So we've talked about Vernon, we've talked about Petunia. Let's talk about Dudley's reaction. So Dudley is just straight up terrified the whole time. He scrambles out of the way, he hides behind his parents, and like, Dudley's terrible, but I do feel a little bad for him because his prior meetings with wizards have not gone well historically. Like, there was Hagrid with the pig's tail, there was the Weasleys with the Tongue Toffee. Like, I'm sure he's thinking it's like, oh crap, another wizard in the home. Like, how will I be traumatized and mutilated this time?
I think Dudley, similar to Draco, is one of those characters who are doing or have done really terrible things to Harry, but they are also very much the product of their like upbringing. So, there's a certain thing that their parents are probably more to blame for their behavior than they are themselves. And especially, I think, probably more so, well, I'm not sure more so, but we definitely see Dudley stopping it after the Dementor incident. Like, it's really, like, shown him how terrible a person he is. With Draco, it's, I think, more so when he realizes how terrible Voldemort is that he's like, maybe I was rooting for the wrong guy.
Well, Draco and his motivations, that's a topic for another day, because I could go off.
And it is very difficult anyway. Like, it's not a straightforward answer.
Yeah. But with Dudley, I do wonder how the Dementor attack the prior year changes his outlook on this part, on like, seeing a wizard at home and being like, oh crap, what's going to happen to me now?
I think the Dementor part is more explaining why Dudley stops being such an asshole towards Harry, because he's starting to realize that he wasn't, the nicest person. I think it doesn't explain Dudley being scared of wizards, because I think that is definitely past experience where they've all been terrible. Mm-hmm. Pretty much exclusively. Have all been terrible.
Yeah. I did notice there's a contrast to Goblet of Fire. So in Goblet of Fire, Dudley grabs the Tongue Toffee because, magic is outweighed by his need for candy, which, like, listen, I get it. If you're on a diet and there's candy, like, you do what you gotta do. But this time, when Dumbledore offers the oak-matured mead, like, Vernon doesn't even have to say, like, don't touch it, Dudley, or anything. Like, Dudley wants no part of it. So, yeah, he's learned not to
Yes, definitely learned.
Because that's literally what happened. In book 1, he took the cake when he shouldn't have. In book 4, he took the candy when he shouldn't have. So this time he's like, nope. However good it tastes, I want no part of it.
Good on him, he's learned.
Yeah.
Harry learns to read, and Dudley learns to not take things that aren't his.
Yes, gross!
Or that are offered to him by wizards, or not offered. Or just generally wizarding things.
Well, I think that is the difference, isn't it? Because the other times nothing was offered to him and he just took. This time, actually, someone's offering to him, which would maybe clue him in that this is, fair game. But
maybe that's why he doesn't want it. Maybe he only likes taking stuff that isn't his. Maybe it's not character growth.
No, let's assume that he's doing better. I want to believe in the good in people.
Even Dudley.
I think there's definitely worse people in this book series than Dudley.
I mean, yes, there's worse people in this scene.
Yes. I was going to say, starting with his parents.
Yeah, well, one more mystery. Aureo, I think this is your note.
Oh, yes. So we get the first introduction of the Blackened Hand. And we've already mentioned it earlier that Harry actually does try and ask about it, but is immediately dismissed. And it's not something that we learn more about until the end of this book. And I think, Irvin, as you've pointed out, fully not learn about it until the end of next book.
Yeah, the more we talk, here on this episode, the more I'm realizing just how many, mysteries are introduced in this chapter. The small ones, like why is Scrimgeour arguing with Dumbledore, and the huge ones, like what's happened with Dumbledore's hand. But it is sort of remarkable just how many, open mysteries we get in this chapter.
So it's not, as we sort of said in the beginning of the chapter, of the episode, a revision chapter. It's more like a setup for the next 2 books.
It is. Part of it is because this is the true, first chapter of the series, right? Because Half-Blood Prince is the only book when we get 2 non-Harry chapters at the beginning. So, largely this is chapter 1, where it's and here's what we're doing in this book. But also, I think a big part of it is that Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows, at least in my mind, are much more intricately linked than any other 2 books. So a lot of the mysteries that get resolved in Deathly Hallows are actually introduced in Half-Blood Prince. So in that sense, I think this chapter is doing double duty in terms of setting up mysteries for 2 books. Yeah,
I think we all agree.
Now I'm curious to, go back to other, quote-unquote first Harry chapters and see, if they set up quite as much. But off the top of my head, I don't think they do. Maybe that'll be next year's project at the Three Broomsticks.
I mean, it sounds like we would revisit a lot of the third chapters again. There are other chapters in this book series, Irvin, not just the number 3.
No, we're just going to keep doing the 3rd chapter on loop. Because we are the 3 broomsticks, okay? We're not the 27 broomsticks.
We could do, multiples of 3.
Oh, I like that. For the 2nd year of this podcast, we do all the chapter 6s. And for the 3rd year of the podcast, we do all the chapter 9s. Oh.
There you go.
But 7 is the most powerful magical number.
Well, we already did a whole episode about that.
Yeah. The 7s are passé. Anyone can do that.
I guess.
We're moving forward.
Should we talk about the mead?
Let's do it.
Yes! Let's talk about mead. We're at a pub.
Exactly. And it is mead from Madame Rosmerta, which is still, 3 broomsticks. So it works really well. I know that you...
And I don't know if I made this note here, but this chapter is partly sponsored by Madame Rosmerta's finest oak matured mead.
Exactly. It's a dual sponsorship for this one. The Daily Prophet only had money for half.
Yes. All right, but actually, talk of our co-sponsor. I found this curious, that the bottle of mead is quote-unquote dusty.
Now, I think you're maybe laboring under the assumption that it is coming directly in the second from Madame Rosmerta, but that would be stealing. So I presume this was bought a while ago and has been in Dumbledore's possession, because surely there are protections on visiting properties that, protect their items being stolen by just anyone summoning stuff.
Yeah.
But maybe,
I hope so.
But maybe Dumbledore, prepaid. He's like, hey, Rosmerta, here's 20 galleons. I'm gonna magic away one of your bottles, sometime next month.
I
subscription.
Exactly. Yes. Dumbledore pays a subscription of 20 galleons each month, and in exchange he gets to spirit away one of her bottles each month.
So are we saying that Rosmerta is clearly making so much money with all the ad payments that she's, all the advertisement is making, so much money for her that she's like, I've just added to this business. This is now a subscription-based additional business I'm doing because there's only 3 Hogsmeade visit school year where there's tons and tons of school children coming drinking in my bar. I also have other days of the week to fill where that doesn't happen. So
yeah, I think that's what it is.
She has a subscription. It's very elite. Not everyone can be part of the subscription club, but Dumbledore certainly can. And I'd say Slughorn can too after a while, but he first needs to get in there.
Yeah.
He's been away for a while.
Also, the irony of Slughorn, who is the Slug Club founder, needs to work harder to join another club. It's I like it.
Listeners, if you want to be just like Dumbledore and have a subscription to the 3 Broomsticks, can I recommend you go to our Patreon?
Well done. Well done.
Thank you. That's patreon.com/3 broomsticks with the number 3. And
correct me if I'm wrong, Irvin, but don't we have a tier at our Patreon that is called Oak Matured Mead?
We do have that tier, and if you subscribe to the Oak Matured Mead at our 3 Broomsticks, I believe you not only get bonus content from us, you also get to ask us questions. So, anything that is floating around your head, any burning curiosity you have about us, about our travels, about our opinions, about anything you want to ask, all you gotta do is pay $10 a month, far cheaper than Madame Rosmerta's tier, and we will provide you with the Oak Matured Mead.
That was so well done. And it's actually, I can confirm, not planned. This is definitely not in our doc. We literally just went off.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
But anyway, I do have one alternate explanation for this. One explanation is that Madame Rosmerta just doesn't clean her bottles. But I like the idea that Dumbledore is doing this on purpose. He knows that Petunia is a neat freak. Also he literally just saw Petunia rubbing down the kitchen with her rubber gloves. So I think he's trying to purposefully discomfit Petunia by being look at all this dust in your home.
That would be very petty, and I know you have arguments for that later, but...
Yeah.
I think Dumbledore is very petty.
I agree that he is, but I feel that's a step up from a normal pettiness.
Maybe this is a further comment on how, we have Tonks being oh, these muggles are really neat, thing. Maybe this is a further comment on the wizarding world is just not as bothered with cleanliness.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's enough evidence other than Tonks' comment to confirm this, but hey, maybe.
Well, we know the Weasleys aren't tidy at all, and Harry likes that about them.
True.
Yeah, none of the wizarding dwellings we're in seem particularly sterile or clean. I guess when you can just perform a Scourgify anytime, you're not as fussed with that.
Oh man, I wish.
I wish I had a Scourgify for my flat.
Oh, amen.
There are many
that.
spells I wish for, but that one. I was wondering if Dumbledore is. I do believe that he isn't, but Harry is a minor, and we do know that he drinks butterbeer and all of that, and occasionally tries a good fire whiskey. But I feel it would be really funny if it's sort of a headcanon that Dumbledore is trying to get him a little bit drunk, so that when they go to Slughorn's place, that Harry is a little bit more uninhibited and speaks his mind. I don't think Harry speaks out of character in the next chapter, but I don't know. It came to mind when Dumbledore was like, "Hey, have some mead."
Yeah.
I never considered this, and I think it's partly because I've had mead before, which is super delicious, by the way. If you drink alcohol, I would recommend it. And it wasn't super strong, so I actually had to be like, I have no idea how strong it is. So I went to look it up, and it first said anywhere between 3.5% to 20, and I was like, okay, that's a range, like a long range. So apparently you can sort of say that matured mead is probably more sort of towards 10 to 20%, so sort of more like 20% is sort of liquor strength, and like not matured, so like regular mead, I guess, is more like 3.5 to 10%, which is probably the mead I've had before. So like sort of beer to wine kind of strong.
I actually just checked. I have mead in our like little liquor cabinet, and it's 10%.
Yeah. So I don't think it's that bad, but I think it's probably because I grew up in Germany or in Europe in general, where we just are a lot looser with drinking than people are in America.
Mm-hmm.
So like at 16, this would probably, or like, he's not 16 yet, but like 15, 16. So this would not be like a huge deal in Germany, especially because he's, you know, in with adult supervision, like there's someone responsible with him. So I think this is more sort of Joe's commentary of this is like normal things teenagers do in like Europe, especially like Germany, UK, which is the countries I can definitely speak for. But I also want to say, I'm not saying alcohol is cool, and be responsible. Don't drink and drive.
I mean, same. Like, since my family is Ukrainian, like, sort of drinking at 16 with adults at home, like, never struck me as weird. But that said, I think, I'm so glad you pointed this out, because I have a lot of thoughts about this. I think Dumbledore isn't so much trying to get Harry drunk, although I like the idea of, he's like, listen, we gotta go, like, talk to Slughorn. You can't be a downer, so, like, you know, have a little. But I think it's more Dumbledore signaling that he's going to be treating Harry much more like an adult going forward. I think Harry was so frustrated in Order of the Phoenix at being treated like a child, at being left out of the loop, at, you know, being mollycoddled. And I think Dumbledore very much, like, is aware of that. You know, he realizes that, you know, age is guilty if it forgets what it is to be young.
Yeah.
So I think that he's like, okay, like, turning over a new leaf. From now on, like, we treat Harry like a grown-up. So he, you know, offers Harry an adult butter beverage, and we see this a lot in how he talks to Harry. In the note, he says, if you are agreeable, I should also be glad of your assistance, talking about Slughorn. And I think there's another moment that sticks out in my head in, like, the Horcruxes 101 lesson, where he's like, you know, Harry, I would be glad of your opinion as to whether my conclusions are likely, or something like that.
Yeah.
But basically, yeah, he's trying to, like, impress upon Harry that it's like, all right, I see you. You are a, like, full-fledged person now. Like, we're treating you like a grown-up, so cheers to your health.
I do really like that that reading of this moment, because I think it checks out. Like, I do really think that this is part, you know, similar to why I've been saying I think Dumbledore is trying to lighten the mood. This is, you know, Dumbledore purposely stepping into a new, like, chapter of the relationship he is having with Harry, which is, you know, much more a relationship of equals. Even though Harry doesn't always feel like he is an equal to Dumbledore, we know that, you know, later in this book he's like, I'm not very done with you. Like, Dumbledore's very much sort of stopping to talk down to Harry.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, this is the start of the change of this relationship.
I agree. It's a really nice reading.
Thanks.
It's almost like you should write a book about Dumbledore.
I know.
Wild.
Yeah. Which, by the way, you can now listen to my book about Dumbledore. Since you clearly like listening to people talk about Dumbledore, my book is now available as an audiobook. Yay!
Woohoo!
So for all that, you can check it out at lifeandliesofdumbledore.com.
Yay. Or, if you're like me, you've got a signed copy in your bookshelf. Is it signed? Did you sign it?
I mean, I assume so. I'm like Lockhart. I'll sign anything if it's long enough.
Yep, you signed it.
Oh, yes, because I completely f***ed up your name.
That's okay. That happens. Also, flash forward to Ron getting poisoned by the mead. So maybe this chapter was sponsored by Rosmerta, but the next one certainly wasn't.
Yeah. We do see mead thrice in this book. We see it here, we see it at the Christmas party when everyone is drinking mead, and then Ron gets poisoned by it on his birthday. So, rule of threes and all that. See? Threes, not sevens. Haha. But I do think that this scene serves to drive home the point that Half-Blood Prince is a very, very booze-heavy book. At this point, this is the third chapter. We are now 3 for 3 in terms of drinking alcohol being featured in each chapter. In the first chapter, Fudge offers the Prime Minister his own whiskey. In chapter 2, Snape drinks wine with the Black Sisters. Here we have Rosmerta's oak-matured mead. I think it keeps going. Slughorn gives Dumbledore a drink grudgingly in chapter 4. And it keeps going throughout the series. Bill is plied with wine by Fleur in chapter 6. We see Voldemort drinking in Lord Voldemort's request. We see Dumbledore getting Mrs. Cole drunk at the orphanage. We see Slughorn drinking all the time.
I think sort of looking back at my own experience around that age, it does sort of track. Like, this is definitely a sort of age that I was like, okay, so I know beer now. Like, I kind of want to see what other stuff is out there, and you sort of try out more, and you find out your tastes and stuff. So I think it probably is partly why it's more in your face, because a lot of the readers grew up with Harry, and they would be more in that age where they would be like, oh yeah, I have a better frame of reference for what all of these drinks mean, rather than, a 10-year-old being like, I don't know, alcohol. Well, hopefully a 10-year-old would be reacting like that to alcohol, I should say.
I mean, in fairness, I was reacting that way still.
Yes.
In fact, I do react to that still because I don't drink.
Yes. Aside from people who choose not to drink, so. But I think that's maybe partly why it's more present there, because it would, the audience of the books would probably be more understanding.
I think that's a big part of it. The other part is the emphasis on potions.
Yes. In
this book. If we're going by the Sorcerer's Stone obstacles predicting each book, then the potions riddle is book 6. And so book 6, it's all about the Half-Blood Prince, advanced potion making. It's about poison and potions and, wine and mead along with that. So I think that's just sort of more of a motif in this book. I do also think you raise a good point about the target audience. I think because Half-Blood Prince is, so very clearly young adult at this point, Jo wasn't as worried about, all the moms being like, this book for 9-year-olds has so much alcohol in it, how dare you?
I think, her books have already been banned by that point because it's witchcraft. So, what's a little alcohol going to do?
I do recall there were a few articles being like, oh, there's an awful lot of alcohol in Half-Blood Prince. But I feel like by that point...
I do think that's an American perspective, though.
Oh, well, of course it is.
But now that you pointed it out, I don't think I had ever really picked up on it. But now that you've listed all the alcohol in the book, it's, more present now in my vision of the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely also didn't clock how much alcohol was there in this book. And I think it does speak to, me being 15 or so when this book came out. So, it's just a much more normal part of your life already. So it doesn't really stand out as much. Whereas I think it would probably have stood out more if I had still been younger. Being like, okay, are they just all drinking now? Because when I was younger, I was still like, oh, alcohol seems like a huge deal. I'm not saying it's not. It's still... very much is. And we've lost Margarete.
Okay. I'm recording on my phone.
All right. we were talking about how the increased booziness of Half-Blood Prince didn't register for you guys. I think it registered for me because I think I saw one of those articles about, somebody clutching their pearls about all the booze in Half-Blood Prince, and I was like, oh yeah. And once you know to look for it, it is definitely all over the book.
Yeah, I mean, it's always one of those things, once someone points something out to you, you can't unsee it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think now that it's been pointed out to me, I will definitely spot it much more, because I'd be like, oh yeah, right, Irvin told me this is a very boozy book, so.
Yeah. Which made it a lot of fun for me when I was matching up the potions and poisons and everything. So the stuff that's in the potions riddle in Sorcerer's Stone, the wines, poisons, and 2 potions, those show up in Half-Blood Prince. That number of wines, that number of poisons, it's all there. It's really kind of extraordinary how well foreshadowed Half-Blood Prince is. But yeah, are we done with Dumbledore plying everyone with mead?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to talk about this when we talk about is Dumbledore being petty or not, because the only other thing we haven't really talked about is him annoying the Dursleys with the mead, so...
So are we doing that now, or are we not doing that now?
Yeah, no, let's get into it. So Dumbledore, offers everybody mead, and the Dursleys don't drink it. Dudley doesn't drink it because he has either grown as a character or doesn't like when it's offered freely. And this is sort of one of the more understandable foibles of the Dursleys. By and large, they're not great, hosts, for lack of a better term. But fair enough. When a guy bullies his way into your room and, pours himself some mead and gives you the glasses, I was like, you know what? I would also look at it a bit askance. You don't know where that mead has been.
Yeah, and Dumbledore knows exactly what he's doing. He knows that they're likely not going to drink. He knows that the glasses are going to start abusing them physically. I don't think it's a great look on Dumbledore.
Yeah, I mean, we may as well dive into it. I think that Dumbledore is incredibly petty. I think he rarely gets a chance to indulge that side of his because he is, the great and the good Dumbledore. And, he's the chief warlock of this, and he's headmaster of that. But whenever we do see him interacting with someone he, genuinely dislikes, and, he's able to, we see this petty side of him come out. We see the way he takes the mickey out of Snape at the end of Prisoner of Azkaban, because in that moment he is not Snape's biggest fan. We see the way he treats Fudge in Order of the Phoenix when Fudge tries to arrest him, and Dumbledore's like, yeah, no. And so I think this is sort of the prime example of that. He does not like the Dursleys. He does not have to be on his best behavior with them. So he is... indulging his mean-spirited side, I think.
I can see that. I also have a question about this moment in particular. In a world where the Dursleys are the same exact terrible people, but, the thing with the tongue toffee, did I say that correctly? Yes. Hasn't happened. Do we think they would be more inclined to drink the mead?
Petunia and Vernon, no. Dudley, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Because, I think the difference this time is that they're seeing Harry and Dumbledore drink the same thing. So, but I guess, and also in their world, it's it's magic, so he could have done something to just our glasses, so... It's
probably also for Vernon and Petunia, and that's why I agree with you that Dudley would drink, and they wouldn't if the tongue thing.
It's a fun thing to say, isn't it?
The fun thing about tongue thing hadn't happened. I think for Vernon and Petunia, it's out of principle.
Wait, can I ask, what is tongue toffee in German?
I don't know. So, Margarete, I don't know if you know.
That's a good question. I will look it up.
Okay. Just because I'm very curious how you translate a tongue twister like that. Literally, tongue twister.
I assume as many things that got lost in translation. Because also the chapter title will not be as fun as it is in English.
Oh.
That's just the thing with like puns and stuff. They just don't translate.
Wirkzungentoffee.
Oh, yeah, no, that doesn't have the same ring.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Yeah, okay, but I think they wouldn't drink the mead out of principle.
Yeah. Like, you know, they could have, like, a rational explanation, which is, like, you know, maybe wizard physiology is different or something. But, yeah, they just do it out of rudeness and hostility.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to Dumbledore being petty, do we think this is another, like, foreshadowing thing that... I mean, arguably, we've already seen it in the previous book that Dumbledore's less perfect than we maybe have assumed in, like, the first couple of books. But that this is more of a stronger hint to that he may have, like, a darker side within him. Because, you know, his motivations in Book 5 were to protect Harry still. He didn't, you know, end up doing the right thing, and he could have done it all better. But, like, he wasn't, you know, being spiteful. Whereas in this moment we see him being petty, I think I would agree. So is this like, you know, when next book we get the Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore, is that, you know, a little bit of, oh, Dumbledore isn't as perfect as we always think he is?
I don't think so, to be honest. Just because the way the chapter is structured, we are so clearly supposed to be on Dumbledore's side. You know, we talked about how Jo reiterates that the Dursleys are terrible in so many different ways. And she makes Dumbledore so funny and so charming that I think, like, this chapter is actually meant to make us like Dumbledore a lot more than we did before. I think sort of the opposite of what you said, actually. I think after Order of the Phoenix, a lot of people were like, Dumbledore maybe isn't quite as great as we all remember him being. And then she needs us to love Dumbledore for Half-Blood Prince to have the emotional impact it does at the end when he dies. So I think this is actually the start of her campaign to be like, look, isn't Dumbledore absolutely awesome? Like, isn't it fabulous how he, like, gives the Dursleys what they had coming?
I would agree to a point, but I think as soon as you sort of look at what he's doing, it does... it taints the picture a little bit. At least it stands very much in contrast to his very joyful attitude. Like, I agree that we're supposed to definitely like Dumbledore a lot more as a human from now on, and that implies that flaws will be around. So I do think, like, on the first read, this is very much a funny scene, but I think it also does prove to just stand in contrast to the way he talks to them in a very jovial manner in the beginning. Yeah. But
I'm curious, like, did you register that when you first read it, like, as a teenager? Or is this, like, you know, hindsight and experience?
No, that's what I'm saying. I think on the first read, it's quite a funny scene.
Yeah.
But I know that it didn't stick with me as a funny scene for very long. Yeah, I think I just generally can't deal very well with, like, physical abuse in any way. So as soon as sort of my brain clocked that as not a great thing, which I will admit was pretty soon, probably not in the first read, but not like the Agapanthus.
Yeah. I think, you know, there's a lot of, like, funny lines he does in this chapter, and, you know, other things that I think are within, like, the line of things that I would think are acceptable considering who the Dursleys are as people. But the thing with the mead is just a bit too much. I was like, I'm okay with him, like, matching them, like, using the couch and, like, making them sit down. I think, like, that's still...
Yeah.
Not, like, that's okay. He's just making them sit down. But, like, that having the mead glasses, just, like, annoy them and like bang next to their faces, and like that's just not funny anymore. Like that just isn't funny.
The other thing is that, like, in the first few books, the adults specifically are written, or at least the Dursleys are written in a very like Roald Dahl style, where adults are always the bad people, and in a very caricature-y way. And this scene, if it had happened in the first, let's say first book, for whatever reason, would have felt more justified, because at that point the Dursleys were nothing more than a caricature and evil people. But I feel like by this time we know more. Obviously we don't know everything because we haven't read, well, on first read we wouldn't have read Deathly Hallows, but we do know that now. So it doesn't really, it feels a little, the humor feels a little bit displaced. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like the humor is more fitting with the caricaturesque, I don't even know if that's a word, descriptions of the Dursleys of the first few books, and less with the situation now.
The Dursleys are like horrible to Harry. I'm like not saying they're not, but like also look at all the things that happened to him, you know, because Harry's there, because magic's around him. Like Vernon's sister got blown up. Like that's like there's stuff that's happened to them that's just not fun. Like their son had a pig's tail, their son had like a tongue that just wouldn't stop growing. Like there are things that have happened, and then, you know, literally the year before Dudley got attacked by a Dementor. So it's like they are reasonably afraid at this point when magic is like this close to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not as good a person as you guys. Like, I know I shouldn't enjoy this scene with the Dursleys perhaps as much as I do, but, like, it's so damn satisfying. Like, I'm just like, you know what? This isn't great, but you go, Dumbledore, you go.
See, I think I can cheer him on until this moment. Like, and then I'm like, if you hadn't done this part, I would still, like, love this. You know, because, you know, he's like the whole, let's assume you've invited me in. Let's like the whole, like that commentary. Hilarious.
That's
love it.
Very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I'm just gonna pester you with drinks now. That's why I'm like, I wish you just hadn't done this part. And then, you know, it would have been great.
Yeah. I mean, especially because we've been talking about the Dursleys on this podcast, like, all
Too
the
much.
time. Every other episode. I feel like, yeah, like having it all laid out before me, I was like, yeah, they suck. They really suck.
Oh yeah, and I'm not apologizing the Dursleys' behavior towards Harry, like it's terrible, but there's also reasonable fear, you know, for the Dursleys in particular when it comes to magic, so.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, so Harry's been left a house.
Harry's been left a house, and okay, look, I was just saying that the Dursleys absolutely suck, so I never want to feel like I relate to any of them, but he's been left a house, said Uncle Vernon greedily. Listen, the older I get, the more I was like, you know what? I'd react the same. Like,
Absolutely.
Real estate is expensive. Like, a townhouse
house?
in a big
Are you
city
kidding
like
me?
London?
In the middle of London, that is prime
In the
real estate.
middle of
Even if he
London.
doesn't want to live there, he can rent it out. He can sell it. Like, even for muggles, this must be prime real estate.
Especially in the 2023 housing market.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Not to say that it was never not, like, expensive and good, like, thing to have, but, like, especially right now.
No, but it was back then too, because remember in Deathly Hallows when they talk about housing prices?
Oh, yes, right.
Yeah, like Uncle Vernon literally mentions it. What is it? Yeah, he thinks that Harry has a plot to get the house at
Yeah.
Privet Drive. Vernon says, house prices are skyrocketing around here. So, yeah, like, you know what? Concerns about the price of real estate? I get it, Vernon. I get it.
Yeah. And we do know that he's all about status and money and stuff, so it does make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like bitter irony because like Vernon is like, what? A house? And Harry's like, I would have loved to never set a foot back into Grimmauld Place because of all the like terrible memories it brings him. And then, we now know that he will actually have to go back as part of his journey to defeat Voldemort. So he will have to face his demons eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But at this very moment, Harry's very not ready.
Well, and I love it how, in this chapter, he doesn't want Grimmauld Place, and he really, really doesn't want Kreacher. And it's only when he repairs his relationship with Kreacher that he can repair his relationship to 12 Grimmauld Place.
Although the whole where they always have to walk past that enchantment of is it Dumbledore accusing? What's the enchantment? I'm not.
Oh yeah,
piecing it together.
The enchantment never made much sense to me. It's you see a dusty Dumbledore figure running at you, being like, "Rah, booga booga booga."
Isn't that what they call him? Dusty.
Dusty.
Yes.
Dusty door.
Dusty door.
Yeah. That would sort of. I hope eventually that fades. Because, after the war, hopefully it just can be as normal a house as 12 Grimmauld Place could ever be.
You have dinner guests, and there's everything's normal about the house. They've done all the renovations. And then there's Dusty.
What do you think Harry did with 12 Grimmauld Place after the war?
He rented out the prime real estate.
Yes.
And thereby funded a charity for house elves or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes. Harry Potter real estate tycoon. I see it now.
Yeah, I think he would definitely hang on to it. He's much too sentimental a person that he would sell it, so he would definitely hang on to it.
I agree.
Yes.
Because he literally names his children stupid names.
James Grimmauld Potter.
You were named after the one house that was very key.
Maybe it becomes Teddy Lupin's sweet bachelor pad after he graduates Hogwarts.
Oh, I would like that.
Right. Because he's also technically part of the Black family, so that works.
Oh, I mean, who isn't? Listen to episode 12.
Also true. And Harry doesn't just inherit the house, he also inherits a mountain of gold.
Yes. Also, this is a very silly thought, I think, and we can not talk about it, but it did make me think about, is insurance a thing in the wizarding world? And,
I'm sure the goblins would hop onto that because it's such a scheme.
Exactly. Because in that case, is your house being blown up by Voldemort covered in insurance schemes? Or is that very just, they're like, nope, that's the one thing we're not going to cover. If Voldemort comes and blows up your house, that's on you.
But I feel like almost anything else you could fix by magic. So
yeah.
It could be dark magic insurance, but then you'd have to prove that you yourself do not experiment with dark magic or that kind of thing.
Right, you'd have to give up your wand, they'll do Priori Incantato.
Yeah.
I feel very dark, but I feel like Luna's mom might not have qualified. Not that I think she did dark magic, but I feel like her magic would have been too experimental for the goblins to be like, yeah, that's not a hazard. So, that is a hazard. Therefore, we can't insure
To be
you.
fair, their house seems like a hazard.
Yeah, I feel like their premiums would be huge anyway.
So I think this part of the chapter gives us some good insight into where Harry is with his grief. Because we know it's only been 2 weeks since, and the summer holidays have started. So it's not been too long since Sirius died. So we see he's not reacting, pretending he doesn't really hear Vernon when Vernon is being rude and asking questions like his godfather died. And it's and Harry's just nope, pretending this is not a thing. He's immediately very enraged when Sirius Killer is possibly the heir to the house. So Bellatrix is mentioned, and Harry's jumping up and starting back into caps lock Harry. And he's very disgusted towards Kreacher, who betrayed Sirius. So those are the 3 things I could see.
Yeah, I think particularly the fact that he doesn't want Kreacher, that he just reflexively is no, I don't want him, Well,
in his mind, Kreacher is the one who absolutely betrayed everything, and cause Sirius to die.
Yeah. It's like, even Dumbledore said end of last book, being like, oh, I'm to blame. Harry's still like, no, Creature's to blame.
Definitely Creature. It's all Creature's fault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But when Creature does show up, the Dursleys' reaction to him is so over the top. I love it. Because they're just, like, appalled at Creature's appearance. And best of all, Aunt Petunia let out a hair-raising shriek. Nothing this filthy had entered her house in living memory.
Yeah, and she's also never seen a house elf. They didn't see Dobby. They don't know that these things exist. And then there's suddenly this, like, really gross-looking, filthy... I mean, not gross-looking in the sense that house elves are gross, but he's, like, filthy and just unfamiliar creature that starts screaming. I think the reaction is quite... I would probably react similarly.
I'm sorry, I'm clearly in a very silly mood, but Margarete, you bringing up Dobby has now me picturing Harry being like, this is what happened with the pudding. Look at this. This was it. You've been so unjust to me. Yeah, he wouldn't, but...
Yeah. Oh, that's another ring. I just realized. House elf ends up in Privet Drive.
I did not ruin the golfer joke. It was a creature that looks like this.
It's the whole thing is so funny with like creature won't, and I'm just like, okay, calm down, little buddy.
I was kind of wondering, like, what would have happened if Creature hadn't obeyed Harry's very, as you pointed out, Irvin, brilliant remark, like.
Yeah, when they're like, Harry, give him an order. Creature, shut up. That never fails to amuse me.
That would have been pretty dramatic. Creature would have kept screaming. But clearly Dumbledore has some kind of hold on him already in some magical form, which must be pretty powerful considering that house elves can apparate out of the cave. And Creature is currently, as far as we know, under Dumbledore's control.
I mean, the most airtight way of dealing with this scenario, if Creature isn't under Harry's control, is to kill him. And I'm not here to advocate killing anyone or anybody, any creature, nothing. But that would be the only sensible thing to do. Any creature? Yes, exactly. I see you on board with me and my puns. But that would be the most obvious thing to do because anything else would backfire.
Yeah. I mean, I think Dumbledore could magically, like, imprison Creature, for lack of a better term.
But then it's almost the question of, is that even more cruel to Creature?
I mean, I feel like the morality of the books is, like, death is the worst thing. Like,
that's true.
You shouldn't kill people or house elves. So yeah, I think Dumbledore wouldn't have made the mistake Voldemort did. He would not have underestimated the damage that a creature can cause. So he would have set up preventative measures accordingly. Like, he has pretty good control of Creature, like Creature's whereabouts and everything right now. So I think Dumbledore would have definitely, like, lined those ducks all up in a row before, he croaked.
I've never heard of that expression before, but surely.
Yeah, sure.
Wait, which expression? The croaking or the ducks in a row?
The croaking.
All of it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I'm mixing my idioms here.
I was like, I'll blame you if I bring that up next week in a work meeting and everyone looks at me like I'm insane.
Okay, I'm curious how often you have to mention people croaking at your work meetings.
Well, I could weave it in. Trust me.
Okay, please do. I really want to hear about this.
Do it for the Patreon content.
Exactly. I mean, at my job, it comes up all the time, because we definitely have clients who are like, God, I wish he'd croak.
Are we moving on from Creature? Are we not? I don't know.
Yes, let's move on to a different type of creature. One
I was going to say, another creature. Is Buckbeak. The Buckbeak to Weatherwings situation has always been really funny to me, because in my head, nobody cares about Buckbeak. They cared about him for like a year when it was dramatic and when Lucius Malfoy cared, but Lucius has other problems right now. No one else actually cares about this this
I
hippogriff.
would argue even then only Lucius and Draco cared.
Yeah.
And
But
obviously Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Hagrid to save Buckbeak.
and the minister cared.
I disagree.
Because
I
Lucius
think
cared.
McNair and Fudge both cared.
I don't think McNair cared. He just wanted like to chop something up, and Fudge cared because Lucius cared. Now Fudge isn't here anymore. Lucius is at this point in time in prison. Draco has other problems. Not that they know that, but I feel like even Draco probably saw this animal once. And, you know, I don't know. I just feel like it's such an overreaction to Buckbeak being back at Hogwarts. They keep bringing it up again, and it's, you know, like people accidentally saying Buckbeak and then being like, oh, Weatherwings. And it always feels like this very over-the-top measure to, like, a hippogriff.
I'm going to push back on that because I think Fudge was upset that the hippogriff escaped justice. Like, you know, at the end of Prisoner of Azkaban, Fudge is, like, annoyed about it. He's like, you know, all that needs to get out is that, like, the hippogriff got away too. So I think, like, Fudge didn't care until Buckbeak escaped. And then he's like, I'm gonna get that hippogriff. He cannot flee from ministry justice.
It never comes up again. And it didn't get out.
Do you think Fudge, with all his new free time, is just roaming the lands to find the hippogriff?
That would be really funny. I'm here for that.
I think during Goblet of Fire, Fudge absolutely had a task force of Aurors hunting the skies for Buckbeak to bring this fugitive to justice.
Now he has nothing else to do, so now he's doing the... Okay, then if that is our headcanon, then I will take my comment back.
I have to say, I'm in your camp where I was always like, okay, who cares? He's like, no one's going to give that much of a, you know, no one's going to care that much what sort of hippogriffs Hagrid has, because surely he still has the other hippogriffs in the forest.
Yeah.
But also, isn't it, like, indicative of, like, the fact that we now care about hippogriffs? Like, the fact that Dumbledore is, like, being like, so on the off chance, we should try to protect Buckbeak. Like, I think that sort of shows the, like, pro-animal welfare position of the good guys here.
That's true. I just had a thought, and I sort of hesitant to say it because it's going to empowers Irvin's opinions about Hagrid. But do we think Hagrid can actually figure it out, not calling Buckbeak Buckbeak?
Nope, not a chance in hell.
I think he is the one who sometimes brings it up, that it's... Or accidentally calls him Buckbeak. I might be wrong about this. I'm not sure.
It sounds like Hagrid, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As much as it pains me to say this.
But while they're talking, we do get confirmation of two important things, right? First of all, we find out that Dudley is 1 month older than Harry, and we find out that wizards come of age of 17. Both of those things are spelled out.
I thought that we already knew this, that Dudley is a month older than Harry, because in Sorcerer's Prisoner's Stone, I can't speak anymore, Philosopher's Stone, Sorcerer's Stone, it's Dudley's birthday, and then like some time passes and then it's Harry's birthday. And I feel like it's been calculated that it's a month, but maybe that's just in my head.
Yeah, so I think that's with hindsight, because all it says is that we have Harry's birthday. We have Dudley's birthday in Sorcerer's Stone, and then the next chapter says, the escape of the Brazilian boa constrictor earned Harry his longest ever punishment. By the time he was allowed out of his cupboard again, the summer holidays had started. So, like, you know, it could be a month, it could be 2, 3, it could be 2 weeks. So, yeah, this actually clarifies that.
Yeah.
Do I remember wrong that we actually figured out how long Harry was locked up?
Well, I think with hindsight we do.
Yeah.
Like, once we know this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just picturing, like, Petunia's relief that Dudley is older than Harry, because, like, she's the older sister, right? And, you know, Lily was always the special one, the one who got to go to Hogwarts and everything. So imagine Petunia felt such pressure that she's like, oh my god, I have to have a kid before she does. I have to, like, you know, beat her to the punch on this. So I think Petunia was probably really, really relieved that she had Dudley while Lily was still pregnant.
I'm sure she's also relieved to learn that she only has to take Harry in one more time. She's like, oh, thank God they're off age by like 17. One less year.
That's also true, yes. Like, she got some good news in this chapter. I love Vernon's reaction when Dumbledore's like, but wizards come of age at 17. And Uncle Vernon is like, preposterous.
It's very funny.
Love it.
And I'm like, I mean, of all the preposterous things about the wizarding world, how does this one offend your sensibilities?
Of all the things that you heard today, this is the thing you're going to call
Right, that's the one where it's like, nope, I just can't get behind that.
It's because it's a structural thing. It's sort of like, if I hear that you guys are allowed to drive at age 16, that's like preposterous to me. Because it doesn't make sense in my head. That's not when you're allowed to drive. Those are like kids. So in his head, it's a structural thing. You're not allowed to be off age at 17.
Yeah, I think that's very much like the culture you're raised in. Like, you're just like, oh, wait. Like, the same way it's preposterous to me that drinking isn't until 21 in America. I'm just like,
No, but that's preposterous to us, too.
That is preposterous.
Like, that's universally preposterous. But I actually, like, thinking about it, I think it's odd that wizards come of age, like, over a year before they finish Hogwarts. Like, I feel like here in the Muggle world, like, your time's to come of age as you finish your primary schooling.
That depends, really. At least in Germany, it really doesn't have to. Like, people can be finished with school at, like, 15, 16, and they would start entering the world.
Finished with school at, like, 20.
Yeah.
Preposterous!
Preposterous! Yeah. How dare they?
But yeah, I mean, especially in Hermione's case, because her birthday is in September, like, she's,
yeah, like, she's a full-blown adult for, like, 2 years at Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Just, like, I guess, like, there's potential for mischief in having, like, full-blown adults, like, at school with all the underage kids.
I mean, that was, to a degree, what happened in my school, like, because you can only drive at 18 in Germany. The people who were older and had then, passed their driver's license and had a car at their disposal would start driving to school. And it was always good to be friends with those people if they were driving the same direction as you, because then you didn't have to take the bus. So, but I was one of the youngest people in my year, so I didn't have that benefit.
I think all of us pretty much turned 18 like halfway, or like in our last year of school. But you are right, it is pretty early. I mean, most of them turn 17 the year, like not in their 7th year, but like in their 6th year.
Yeah, during their 6th. Yeah. Because the way it's done in New York is it's based on calendar year. So like half the people turned 18 during their last year of school and the other half turned 18 during their first semester of college.
Yeah.
So like there are still people going to college who like aren't considered adults.
Preposterous.
Indeed.
It's a great word. I'm gonna incorporate that into my daily use of the English language.
Yes, I think so too. It's a very good word. I don't know why I haven't been using it. Because I find so many preposterous things in my life.
I was going to say, it sounds like a you word.
It does, doesn't it?
I also like that Vernon goes from, I don't mean to be rude, to like, preposterous.
Well, I mean, by that point, he's like, no, you know what? At this point, this dude is, like, beating me over the head with mead. Like, I'm gonna be as rude as I want.
I mean, fair enough.
But, all right, I think we should finish the episode with just a highlight reel of Dumbledore's quotes in this chapter, because they are just amazing. Like, Dumbledore and Joe Rowling are on top of their game. Like, the man sharpened all his verbal daggers and he came ready to throw down.
Can we each read one?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Okay, well, I need the second one, so someone do the first one.
Okay, I'll do the first one. I don't mean to be rude, he began in a tone that threatened rudeness in every syllable. Yet, sadly, accidental rudeness occurs alarmingly often, Dumbledore finished the sentence gravely. Best to say nothing at all, my dear man.
This is so good.
I love it. I love I love Joe calling out the irony here of, phrases like, I don't mean to be rude, because, it's so full of shit, right? It's right up there with, no offense, but, and all their ilk.
No offense, but all of the offense.
Yes.
All the offense.
No, I think the best part for me in that whole thing is in a tone that threatened rudeness in every syllable. That's the part that I'm like, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So the quote I use most in my everyday life is when Dumbledore says, I would assume that you were going to offer me refreshment, but the evidence so far suggests that would be optimistic to the point of foolishness.
Yeah.
I think I use the phrase optimistic to the point of foolishness at least every day of my life.
I've definitely heard you say it before. So.
Right? Because it's so nicely phrased. It so perfectly conveys everything I want to say.
It's well worded.
Yes.
There's generally, throughout the whole series, there's quite a lot of, really great quotes you can take from Dumbledore, but the most funny ones are in this chapter.
Mm-hmm.
So is it me with the next one?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry, said Dumbledore politely, and he raised his wand again. All 3 glasses vanished. But it would have been better manners to drink it,
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Also, does this happen every time, where every time a wizard visits the Dursleys, the wizard lectures them about manners?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All the time.
Well, the last wizard exploded their fireplace, so...
But still talk to them about manners.
Yeah.
The best that can be said is that he has at least escaped the appalling damage you have inflicted upon the unfortunate boy sitting between you.
So that is Dumbledore talking about Dudley.
Yep.
And I remember reading this quote and being like, damn!
And then the Dursleys looking between them as if they expect to find someone other than Dudley.
Right, they're like,
so
where's
funny.
this mistreated boy? I mean, it's also so funny that that Dudley spends the rest of the chapter trying to think of how he's been mistreated.
Yep.
That is savage.
Yeah, so
Dumbledore ain't
brought
wrong.
up to be a terrible person.
But savage.
Yeah.
It sets the tone for a book that focuses a lot on Draco and about sort of the trouble you can get into when your parents f*** up.
Yep.
That's very true, yeah. Because we've already mentioned this, there are quite a few parallels between Dudley and Draco. One of them being their name starts with a D.
Yes. And we will end the episode and the chapter on the absolutely wonderful. And now, Harry, let us step out into the night and pursue that flighty temptress adventure.
That's such a good one.
It's so beautiful. It's one of my favorite quotes.
It's fantastic.
I think that's one of the ones that's more often overlooked. If you go in the best quote from Dumbledore, this is most likely not mentioned, but it's such a good one.
Yeah. Well, because it's not insightful or anything.
Yeah.
It's just poetic.
Yeah.
That said, I've definitely seen at least a few tattoos of that quote.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. It's a really good tattoo quote for the people who like adventure.
Yeah.
So, all the Gryffindors, let's meet at a tattoo.
Yeah, listeners, we're going to have our first 3 Broomsticks meetup where all the Gryffindors meet at a tattoo parlor.
I'd be so here for that.
Yeah, how many years of podcasting before we all get 3 Broomsticks tattoos?
I mean, I say now, but I'm not sure what the others say. Yeah. I was like, you and I already have tattoos, so I think we're more easily convinced. Well,
Sam has lots of tattoos, does too. So. He has half a sleeve.
Yeah, so I think he's probably not going to be hard to convince. I don't know about Sophia.
I don't think she's tatted up quite yet. We'll work on it.
Yeah, because I think if you have one, I think you're past the thing where it's this is a big deal. I mean, it's still a big deal, but...
Yeah. Margarete, are you tatted up or no?
I am, but not to the point where I'm getting tattoos every day kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I have one tattoo.
All right.
Oh, yeah, we're not doing that either.
Yeah. But you'll join us for a 3 Broomsticks tattoo, right?
I'm sure I'll be around. You all meet up at the same time, at the same place. Maybe in Berlin, I might join.
Hell yeah. Well, I look forward to you joining us for the tattooing. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us here at the Three Broomsticks. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. I mean, ever since we met up in Berlin at my book launch, and I was like, oh my god, we're going to be best friends now, and we're going to talk about Harry Potter incessantly. Like, I've known we need to get you on this podcast, so...
It's been an absolute delight. Thank you for contacting me and reaching out, and I've really enjoyed this.
Yay!
Now I can only confirm. It's always great to talk to you, Margarete, and I think congratulations to both of us for actually speaking in English and not just doing this in German. We're the majority at this point. So
I mean, you know what? I just spent 2 weeks in Germany, so I think I would have followed. You know, I know all the key words: Ausgang, Dankeschön, like bratwurst, like it's all good.
All the words that commonly come up in Harry Potter.
Margarete, is there anywhere our listeners can follow you? Do you have anything you want to plug while you're here?
No, not really. I have a private Instagram account, so no, can't follow me anywhere. And as for plugging, listen to the Three Broomsticks and any other Harry Potter podcast that you can find, because that is what I do with my free time. And yeah, that's about it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wise words right there.
Yeah. Shout out to my boyfriend who bought me the first Harry Potter book illustrated edition for my first year of teaching at a school. I just want to shout that out because I thought it was great and sweet and wonderful. And now I have the first illustrated edition book.
That is sweet.
Yes. Shout out to you.
Yay.
Well done.
Well, if you'd like to buy us things, well, more specifically, a round of drinks at the pub, head over to patreon.com/3broomstick with the numeral 3 to sign up. We're offering bonus content, chats with the host, and on-episode shoutouts to our patrons. We would really appreciate your help in keeping the lights on at the Three Broomsticks so we can talk about Harry Potter for a long time to come. And get tattooed, clearly.
Yeah. I mean, guys, don't you want to be like Dumbledore? Sign up for our Patreon.
Exactly. You can also help by rating and reviewing us. And if you like our show, don't forget to tell your friends, your co-workers, anyone who wants to listen to you, really trick everyone into listening to us. Word of mouth helps us so much. So we really always love to see if you give us a shout out on social media.
Yeah. And in the meantime, you can find us all over the internet. You can visit our website, 3broomstickspod.com. That's with the 3 spelled out. There you're going to find links to any essays we mention. You can find all of the polls that, we're apparently going to be putting up. You can submit a topic for us to talk about and just let us know your thoughts about everything we discussed here. You can also find us on social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Our assorted handles can be found in the episode description or on the website. And you can always just shoot us an email at 3broomstickspod@gmail.com with the number 3.
And next time we meet at the pub, here at the Three Broomsticks, we'll be doing a crossover with Percy Jackson. So look out for that.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
Yeah. I'm Aureo.
And I'm Irvin. Thank you for listening. See you next time in the Three Broomsticks. Cheers!
Give me big old buckets of butterbeer. Give me big old barrels of butterbeer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here. Give me big old buckets of butterbeer. Give me big old barrels of butterbeer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butterbeer.
This episode of The Three Broomsticks was edited by Patrick Musilek. The theme song was written and performed by the Faithful Sidekicks. Make sure to check them out at thefaithfulsidekicks.com.
Irvin just got back from Germany and knows a lot about the train rides now.
Yeah.
The trains are a fucking nightmare. Oh my god.
Flashback to a year ago when Irvin and I were meeting up in London and I was moaning about the trains in Germany and Irvin was like, oh, shut up, at least you have trains and they're really running super well. I was like,
okay, that is because last year, one train was like a minute and a half late, and they like apologized profusely for it. So it's literally just in the last year.
Meanwhile,
and this time you got the real experience of trains in Germany.
God.
Not the miracle world that you clearly inhabited last time you were in Germany.
No. Yeah, Margarete, I might not be visiting you anytime soon. Like, I'm gonna need a minute to, like, get over my trauma from the German trains.
Scarred from the train rides.
Yeah.
Oh,
that is absolutely fair.
Hilarious, because Irvin and I were on holiday at the same time, which was really good planning for us both being producers of this podcast. But I was like hiking in Scotland, and Irvin was like messaging me. He's like, the trains are always delayed. I was like, yeah? What am I supposed to tell you? This is Germany.
I'm like, why does your hometown hate me?
It doesn't.
It really doesn't. It's you gotta learn not to take it personally.
I don't know, it felt personal.
And just go with it. Just go with it.
It felt real personal.
Yeah.
But I think you still had a nice time, despite the trains.
Up till the last few days. Yeah, like, it was the last few days in Stuttgart, and just sort of, like, the fates conspired against me. But other than that, it was a really good time.
Anyway, podcast.
Yeah.
We interrupt this segment of our travels with this podcast.
I have no idea where we are. Has Dumbledore arrived?
Yeah, we were just talking
Dumbledore
about
arrived,
Harry not packing,
yes.
which got us derailed to packing.